Well, a lovely, lovely Thursday morning. It is the 30th day of July 2020. Thank you so much for always keeping it TV47. It is a time for Morning Cafe with me, Linda Alela, as I take you through what is happening in the world of news right here in the country and across the world. And we also take a look at a comprehensive aspect of tight conversations that have been ongoing in the country in terms of matters police brutality. We also take a look at the stalemate that is still ongoing at the level of the counties in terms of sharing the funds. And importantly, the tussle that is still going on right here in Nairobi. What way forward for the country's biggest city is technically what we'll be discussing this morning. We also take a look at what is enshrined on the newspapers across all these three newspapers that we'll be having. We'll be having the People Daily, the Daily Nation, and the Standard newspaper. And taking us through that is Alois Lavan, who is the CEO of Vijana Mkeni Youth Organization. But before we get to that, it's important that we take a look at the news stories that have been prepared by my team. My name is Linda Alela. Important that I interact with you, or I invite you to be part of this discussion or this session right now from 6 a.m. all the way to 9 a.m. in the morning. Hashtag Morning Cafe at Linda_Alela is my Twitter handle at TV47KE. You can as well stream live and get to watch us and drop those messages. The numbers will be rolling down on your screen where you can drop your text, that is the SMS short code, and where you can call us and we get to hear your sentiments in regards to the issues that we'll be discussing. Also on Facebook, we are TV47, on YouTube, TV47. Stream live and be part of this conversation all the way. Thank you so much. As we kick off, at least 634 healthcare workers have been tested positive for coronavirus in the country. This even as the Ministry of Health revealed that some healthcare workers are defying health ministry protocols, risking the lives of their patients. The numbers of confirmed cases in the country hit the 19,000 mark yesterday, as Zainab Mohammed tells us.
Healthcare workers are among the frontliners during this COVID-19 pandemic. The Ministry of Health on Wednesday confirming that at least 634 health workers have contracted coronavirus.
Some 634 health workers, health professionals have actually turned positive across the country. It's about 3%. It's about 3% of the cases reported.
However, according to the Ministry of Health, despite the government providing enough PPEs for health workers, there are some rogue doctors putting their patients at risk.
Doctor at Kenyatta National Hospital, a doctor, qualified doctor, who had traveled and instead of quarantining themselves, wanted to proceed on to go to the theater and conduct surgery. Fortunately, they didn't because some nurse reported him. Thank you to the nurse. We also had a case just this week of another doctor who has actually turned positive and wanted to continue behaving normally. Go to a theater and start conducting surgery and you are positive. You know, honestly, this borders on criminal behavior. So we want also to tell the healthcare workers, tafadhalini, whether you are doctors or dentists or pharmacists or whatever, please, tafadhalini, you must follow.
The ministry has further disapproved the rumors that men who contract COVID-19 turn impotent, as the health CS Mutahi Kagwe urged Kenyans to keep safe during this cold weather, as it has been proved to be a contributing factor to the rising COVID-19 infections.
China, about the effects of becoming positive. We hear very strange rumors, which I'm not going to participate in perpetuating, because I don't want to be a rumor monger. But the men should be careful. Men should be careful with this positivity that we are continuing to get, particularly young men. You should be very, very careful with the infections and possible side effects that in future, we don't know, but in future, we don't know what side effects some of these diseases will have. Let's be careful.
Kagwe further urged the communities practicing circumcision ceremonies to cease from performing the ceremonies until the COVID-19 infections can be managed in the country.
Is it better to have a postponed initiation ceremony and have somebody to initiate or carry out an initiation ceremony and kill our young men? So there's a debate that is going on, but I can tell you that there is nobody at the moment, and it is actually prohibited, to think of such carrying out such activities prior to the agreement with the Ministry of Health.
The total number of COVID-19 infections in the country has risen to 19,125 cases after 544 more people tested positive for the virus in the last 24 hours. 113 people have recovered from the virus after receiving treatment from various hospitals across the country, as 12 more people succumbed to the virus. For TV47, I'm Zainab Mohammed.
And Interior Cabinet Secretary Dr. Fred Matiang'i has hinted on the disbandment of the Nairobi City County. Matiang'i has also ordered for the disarmament of everyone at the assembly, with 14 firearms being confiscated so far, Mwangi Minor reports.
Following the chaos witnessed at the Nairobi County Assembly on Tuesday, Interior CS Dr. Fred Matiang'i says stringent measures will be taken to restore order in the Assembly.
We're just basically sick and tired of living in this kind of manner. Mr. Ndolo, our regional police commander, will tell you that our security deployment around the CBD in Nairobi, 25 to 30% of it is around the County Assembly of Nairobi. And most of that is because of what happens around there is just pure criminality. And we cannot go on this way. There are decisions that need to be made. And I am now ready myself to seek the guidance of the National Security Council on this matter, on policing the County Assembly of Nairobi.
Matiang'i has further ordered the disarmament of everyone at the Nairobi County Assembly following a spate of violence altercations at the Assembly. He said that all the gun licenses of the people at the Assembly have been suspended. Matiang'i says he is in consultation with the National Security Council to come up with a permanent solution of policing the County Assembly.
Are we going to get a contingent of GSU and ask Mr. Kanja to station a contingent of GSU outside the County Assembly? Because they're constantly fighting, it's war and so on and so forth. And I've asked the Inspector General of Police today, with the regional security team in Nairobi, to disarm everyone around that County Assembly. Anyone who holds firearms, there could be people. We already collected 14 guns. Let's tell the public the truth. The 14 guns we collected from around that environment, the level of criminality that has gone on, I suspect there could probably be more firearms.
He further condemned Tuesday's police brutality at the Assembly and asked police officers to act with decorum and professionalism.
Are we going to get a contingent of GSU and ask Mr. Kanja to station a contingent of GSU outside the County Assembly? Because they're constantly fighting, it's war and so on and so forth. And I've asked the Inspector General of Police today, with the regional security team in Nairobi, to disarm everyone around that County Assembly. Anyone who holds firearms, there could be people. We already collected 14 guns. Let's tell the public the truth. The 14 guns we collected from around that environment, the level of criminality that has gone on, I suspect there could probably be more firearms.
Meanwhile, women members of parliament and their counterparts from the Nairobi County Assembly paid a visit to Mlango Kubwa MCA Patricia Mudheu, who was at the epicenter of police brutality Tuesday morning and is currently hospitalized. Mlango Kubwa residents condemned the police brutality, meted on the ward representative, and called on the Inspector General of Police to expedite investigations to bring the culprits to book.
Mheshimiwa kupigiwa hivyo na ni kiongozi wetu ambaye sisi tulichagua. Anaturepresent hata kiwa kule, yeye ni macho yetu hapa Mlango Kubwa. Niliona huyo mwanaume alimpiga mpaka nikasikia uchungu sana. Ile uchungu nilisikia nikasema kama ingekuwa ni bibi yangu, otherwise ingekuwa ni mambo mengine.
Mudheu was among a number of MCs who wanted to eject Speaker Beatrice Elachi from office. Mwangi Minor, TV47, Nairobi.
That story too will be forming the basis of our discussion this morning. But something else, ODM Raila Odinga is in a dilemma between supporting counties that are likely to lose if the disputed revenue sharing formula is implemented, or cling to save the BBI or to save the BBI agenda. Now, the coastal counties that mostly support him might lose big on the disputed formula, as Joash Onsari now reports.
The tussle on county revenue allocation formulas put the Building Bridges initiative in a dilemma, with a section of Jubilee senators threatening to pull out their support for BBI if their NASA counterparts won't support the third generation formula. Recently, the former Premier Raila Odinga has been termed as the major beneficiary of the BBI. Analysts saying going forward, he might find himself between a rock and a hard place.
On Tuesday, no passage of the formula, no BBI. We thought we are supporting BBI so that we devolve more funds to the counties, and therefore no county loses. We are supporting BBI because it supports the concept of one man, one shilling, and that is the whole rationale that is underpinning this proposal.
Raila now being in a dilemma, either to support the losing counties, which some support him immensely, or save the BBI agenda. The coastal counties that for the longest time have been supporting him are among those counties that are likely to lose if the formula is implemented. Cumulatively, the coastal region counties will lose more than 6 billion shillings. Mombasa County might lose 1.6 billion, Tana River 1.5 billion, Kwale County 1 billion shillings, Kilifi County 859 million, and Taita Taveta more than 399 million shillings. Other counties that Raila enjoys political following that might lose include Kitui, Turkana, Vihiga, Narok, and Makueni County. In the proposed formula, 25 counties opposed the majority whip Irungu Kangata's amendments to defer the third generation formula, while 22 counties supported.
We want to see the people who are prepared to hang Makueni. So do it now. Don't postpone our misery. Hang us now.
Those who are convinced that this is a formula that advances the one man, one shilling principle, look at the per capita allocation. It is a fallacy. Have the one you love the one you have. We must adopt a formula that will apply properly without causing losses.
NASA senators, including Stewart Mwachiru of Kilifi, Mutula Kilonzo of Makueni, Cleophas Malala of Kakamega, are among those opposed Kangata's amendments. Others who opposed include Professor Sam Ongeri of Kisii County, Okongo Omogeni of Nyamira, Ledama Olekin of Narok, and Malaki Ekal of Turkana County. In his statement early this week, Raila Odinga called on senators to pass the disputed formula, saying the tussle has affected the counties, though Raila didn't come out clear if he is supporting the disputed formula. Joash Onsare, TV47, Nairobi.
That too will form part of the discussion that we'll have this morning. And away from that, as most bars in the country bear the brunt of following their closure as part of the government's directives to curb the spread of COVID-19, owners have been forced to change a tact to remain afloat. In Nakuru County, one bar has now converted his nightclub into a church as the effects of COVID-19 take a toll on bar businesses in the country. David Muthuka reports.
A few days ago, revelers in Nakuru town will stream into Tas Bar and Hotel, perhaps to momentarily enjoy the now popular Kagwe special treat of a sausage and 2 beers. But with the government issuing a directive barring sale of alcohol in eateries as well as the continued closure of bars, the Kagwe special menu has been abolished. This spelling doom resume on many bars and restaurants in the country, but the management of Tas Bar and Hotel in Nakuru have sought an alternative to stay afloat amid the raging closure tides in a bizarre turn of events. What was once a nightclub is on a transformation for Christian outfit, Enlightened Christian Gathering. We meet the church pastor Jeff Buller, hands occupied in a bid to convert the nightclub hall into a church, perhaps in anticipation of a church service this coming Sunday.
Na sisi kwa lugha nyingine kama kanisa tumeipokea na tumeshukuru sana kupata hii hall na kumtumikia Mungu.
The club's owner Paul Kinyuru has converted yet another section of his club into a workshop, making hospital beds and hand-washing stations in the fight against COVID-19. But for the staff here, their jobs hang in the balance, at least for those who will not transform into church servants.
Most of us, probably like 90 home, we won't be making sales and then we won't be getting anything. So we are just going home.
Tumefungiwa, tumewezwa. Hii ugonjwa mali inatupeleka. Nikai imetupeleka mpaka to the death.
This as Health Cabinet Secretary Mutahi Kagwe termed the closure of bars a silver lining, asking Kenyans to utilize money they spent on bars in other developmental initiatives.
Wale ambao wanazidi kuhitaji ile vitu ambao tumekataza, ni lazima mjaribu sana. I know sometimes it's a challenge. Hata mimi nilikuwa nafurahia Kagwe special go hivyo. Hiyo pesa nilikuwa na hiyo maneno, hata mimi nitasaidia pahali ama nimpe mtu mwingine nyumbani.
The closure of bars and ban on sale of alcohol in restaurants is among directives issued by President Uhuru Kenyatta to tame spread of the COVID-19 disease. David Muthoka, TV47.
All right, yes, that was an interesting one. While it might sound funny, is the truth of the matter. Now, wrangles between the Kenya National Union of Teachers and Teacher Service Commission continues to ensue as thousands of teachers allied to NAT are denied promotions and a salary raise for the second year running. Eli Logova with the details.
32,556 teachers have missed out on the CBA signed between the Teacher Service Commission and Kenya National Union of Teachers, with the teachers' employer TSC citing their membership to the giant teachers' union. It is this disagreement of promotions that has soured relations between TSC and NAT, and teachers seem to be the pawns in the high-stakes battle. Kenya National Union of Teachers Secretary General Wilson Zosion accused Teacher Service Commission of managing teachers through blackmail and corruption as he called for adherence to strict terms of the Code of Regulations, the TSC Act and the 2017 CBA.
The Act is very clear on defining unionizable employees. Any unionizable employee is eligible to join any union. That is where eligibility comes in. It is defined in law. It is in the judgment. But TSC has got a legal desk which has been promoted to a directorate that is now running even the implementation of the CBA. This is where the problem is.
According to the 2017 CBA, teachers were entitled to salary increment and promotion that included 54 billion shillings. The CBA had been spread over 4 years, with its execution starting on July 2017 and its fourth and final phase in July this year. NAT is now calling upon the president to intervene and settle the matter.
Sisi tunataka tukutane na mwajiri. Akikataa, amekataa kutoka mwaka uliopita Julai. Walimu watapata pesa zao kutoka mwaka uliopita Julai, na hii ni Julai. Kwa hivyo 12 months walimu wamedhulumiwa. Rais, tunakuomba mtukufu Rais Uhuru Kenyatta, can you intervene in this issue?
The promotions and salary increases are the final fulfillment of the 54 billion shillings collective bargaining agreement signed by the two unions and the teachers' employer. Eli Logova, TV47, Nairobi.
All right, and joining me this morning is Lois Lavan Otieno, who's a youth leader, to take us through what he thinks about the stories that have been captured on the newspaper, starting with the Standard newspaper. On that very story that Eli Lugova has taken us through, TSC holding our 554 billion, and that is according to the Furious Union bosses. Of course, that is what they say. Discrimination claims, and NAT says the teacher's employer is operating outside the code of regulation and threatens industrial action in January. This has been captured extensively on page 2 of the Standard newspaper. And coming to you, Alois, it's pretty much unfortunate that this is ongoing. And again, there are threats of actually teachers going to school after months and months of students being away from school. Then they go back to school to an industrial action.
Good morning, Linda. Can
Morning.
you hear me? All right. So, I mean, it's quite unfortunate that in Kenya we treat teachers like they're I would say people who don't matter in society. Yet all of us are where we are today because of our teachers. So I think if there's any money that should be owed to teachers, this should always be a priority. And as learners have already gone through such a difficult period, having to adapt to online learning, and for some of them having to be actually repeat classes. And then to hear again that we're going to have industrial action in January is very worrying. And I think these are the things that the CS for Education should actually be more concerned about rather than when schools are reopening and when they're not reopening. But I think the focus should be on dealing with teachers so that next year we have smooth learning in schools.
All right, indeed, we honestly hope that that will be addressed accordingly before it gets out of hand. It's pretty much unfortunate. Let's go back to the front page of the Standard newspaper and see what other story has been captured. The Stormy House defeat stands Uhuru Raila. This is in regards to the stalemate that is ongoing still on the revenue sharing. And the very same story has been captured on also all these other newspapers, as of course on the front page, taking a look at what is on the Daily Nation. Yes, what is on the Daily Nation? Okay, but anyway, page 2 of the Daily Nation, why senators failed to unlock the stalemate on a revenue formula. And also the front page of the People Daily, just highlighting what it is that could have informed that in what they say is, the curfew hours that came in handy to probably just quell the stalemate at that particular time. But then the question is, why is it that we are still at this point? Curfew, the unlikely savior in revenue stalemate, captured on page 2 of the People Daily. So, Alois, coming to you, this is a conversation that has been going on. You are a youth leader. What does it speak? 1, about the leadership. 2, about the future of the country. 3, about devolution, which is key towards ensuring that people at the grassroots are able to enjoy development, are able to be catered for, and are able to get employment at the level of their counties.
First of all, this stalemate has led to counties not being able to have the most basic functions. Spoken to many business people who have done business with counties, and they can't get their payments right now because there is no revenue allocation formula that the Senate has settled on. But I believe it's very simple. Counties need to be disbursed money according to, 1, how much they're bringing to the table, also as counties, and also they need to look at development versus non-development. For example, if you look at a county like Wajir or Garissa County, which is not as developed as Nairobi, I think we should be looking at getting Garissa to maybe where Nairobi is, so that we're able to have equal counties, if that's how I'll put it. But also, counties need to look away from getting allocation from government, so that we don't have some of these issues. We need to have counties trying to generate their own income, and I think that's the future. If you look at counties like Kitui, which have started producing PPEs, I think that's the direction that we need to take, so that in future we're not tussling, and when future leaders like me get to Senate and Parliament, then we're not fighting for revenue allocation, and rather we're looking at how can we actually reduce allocation from the national government so that it can go to national development projects rather we start creating our own revenue. However, I think it's time that the different party leaders got together, crack the whip, because as we know, they're the ones who really call the shots. And I think that's what they need to do right now. We need to see Raila, Uhuru, Kalonzo, Mudavadi sitting down and actually coming up and saying, okay,
but Alois, why should they be the determinant factors? Why should be why not the issues that face us as a people? Why not the crucial things that we're talking about in terms of space, in terms of development and all that? Why should it boil down to these key figures? I mean, should it be them who always determine the fate of every other Kenyan today?
Because one thing that we forget, Linda, is politics is all about resources. Who gets what, where, and when. And as we know, in Kenya, our political parties, unfortunately, are still aligned to these leaders. So we'd be ignorant to ignore the fact that they play a very critical role in marshalling their troops to be able to come up with a solution. However, I do agree with you. It needs to be issue-based, and the senators also need to have some level of independence to look at the facts that are there on the ground rather than just waiting also to be directed. But if you look at how revenue sharing ideally should be, it's not supposed to favor one region or one county, but which is why I really don't believe in the 1 man, 1 shilling, 1 vote formula. But I think it needs to be a national, it needs to have a national outlook where the most vulnerable counties are actually being helped to get to where other developed counties are.
All right. Well, that story also is what is making the front page of the Daily Nation newspaper. Political disaster: how Uhuru Raila cash low fell apart. And that story also expounds some more on what it will look like for Right Honorable Raila Odinga. Remember, amid all this talk, there are political interests of the same. And now coast leaders plot to abandon ODM. Why? Because they feel like they are likely to lose a match on the proposed share. So in the event that Right Honorable Raila Odinga proceeds to support this and it goes through, it would mean then that he does not have their interest at heart, knowing very well that Coast has been considered as a stronghold for ODM. So crossing over to page 4 of the Daily Nation, this is exactly the page that handles or that captures that particular story. And here it is. Which way Coast ODM legislatures plot to ditch Raila for regional party, and MPs argue that such a move would give the region a better bargaining stand on the national stage. What do you make of this, Alois?
First of all, I think if the Coast leaders were to ditch ODM, then that would be one of the biggest blows that ODM would face. This is because ODM has always had its stronghold, one of its strongholds as the Coast counties. But I think the leaders there are very valid to also be asking the questions that they're asking, because they voted for ODM. Almost 60 to 70% voted for ODM. And if you look at the previous years, Kilifi County is actually one of the counties that brings the most income to the country, and that's obviously because of the tourism sector. So, and it brings me back to my point where we need to look at such things as determining factors. For example, we can't be taking away money from Kilifi County at a time like this when we have the pandemic and there's no tourism. So that's what is going to keep Kilifi County, for example, at par with the other counties, which maybe have farming and so on, and are still able to generate revenue for their counties. But I always look at the independence of regions, and I think it would be a very bold move, a very timely move for the Coast region to start charting their own costs. However, I also don't think that's the Coast region has brought a lot of the opposition leaders, I would say, that we have in the whole Kenyan outlook perspective right now. So I think it would be important that they stay there so that they can also keep the government in check. Leaders like Kingi, who are not afraid to speak. We have leaders like Governor Joe, who are not afraid to speak. So I think politically it would be a very big blow for ODM, but I don't see it going that direction just yet. I think Raila Odinga is a very intelligent man, and he knows what cost means to ODM.
All right, and still, yeah? You speaking?
Yes. No, that's it.
All right, okay. Let's talk some bit about the COVID-19 situation in the country. Probe launched into Kericho ambulance tender mystery. I mean, in a way, corruption has found its way into the issue of this situation, and it's pretty much unfortunate that as we deal with COVID-19 still, we have issues in regards to matters, corruption that are taking center stage, yet we're not even able to get answers from our very own leaders. That has been captured on page 5 of the Daily Nation, and only one vehicle expected instead of 3, yet price remains the same. So the Public Procurement Regulatory Authority has launched investigations into how the Kericho Council government awarded Delta Equipment Limited a tender to supply an ambulance and utility vehicle as 42.3 million, or at 42.3 million. This amid the battle that we are putting up in regards to dealing with COVID-19 and the numerous amounts of money that have been channeled towards ensuring that we're successful on that. And crossing over to page 6 and 7 of the same, that is the Daily Nation, still on matters COVID-19 in the country. Arrival of kits to enhance testing samples. There you go, has captured on page 6, and results for suspected cases will now be available after 24 hours. You know very well that there have been complaints that after you're tested, you take even a week or so to get your results, raising the question as to just how legit are these testing kits and the process at large. And also, COVID-19 leaves recovered patients with diseased hearts. Studies show this is pretty much an unfortunate occurrence that is coming up, and virus has been known to cause a clotting of blood and may damage vessels in the heart, lungs, kidney, and even in the brain, says Dr. Dan Gikonyo. This is unfortunate and scaring at the same time, in as much as we celebrate that our people have come out to get healed, and recovery cases are a sign of blessings and all that. So Aloy is coming to you. Generally looking at how we've dealt with COVID-19 as a country, what do you make of this? Of course, World Health Organization or the People Daily at some point also saying that Kenya is not on the right trajectory. So World Health Organization red flag over Kenya COVID-19 deaths. The numerous cases that we having right now is pretty much unfortunate. Confidential letter to Health CS Kagwe expresses concern about rising coronavirus cases, saying it was an indication of widespread community transmission, as captured on page 6. Remember, the death toll also shooting up extensively, which is indeed quite an unfortunate occurrence. As of Wednesday, 19,125 people had tested positive, confirmed cases, 8,021 recoveries so far, and 311 deaths registered. Alois.
First of all, it saddens me to see stories where, rather than putting our efforts towards fighting COVID, then we have this COVIDpreneurs coming up and still swindling counties. So I'll choose not even to dwell too much into that, but say it's unfortunate and very shameful. And one way of dealing and how successful countries have been able to deal with COVID. We can't say any country has been successful because we've had deaths, but one of the easiest ways to combat this virus is by mass testing and ensuring that as many people in the country know their COVID-19 status. And so it's very good news to hear that more COVID tests are actually arriving in the country, and we hopefully that will be the solution, because if we know those that are sick, then we're able to treat it at an early stage and stop the mass spread of COVID-19, which is what I feel like is happening right now. And in terms of WHO issuing a red flag, definitely. But I think this is also because as a country, we've not been able to do enough testing. But I feel like the more we're improving and having as many people tested as possible, that's why we're seeing the sharp increase in numbers as well. Because previously, I don't think we were doing enough tests as a country, but now we're slowly getting there. So I think what's happening is we're seeing the true figures now, rather than it being an increase. And I feel like we should be alarmed, but also not too alarmed. Rather push for more and more people to get tested. People like you and I need to have as much go for volunteer testing. pretty much.
All right, and of course, that is what is happening, and we're waiting to see. But we cross over to another big story that has been captured on almost all the newspapers. Some of them have actually captured this on the front page: fugitive wanted in U.S. over drugs arrested in Mombasa. This is according to the People Daily. This also has been captured on the rest of the newspaper. Let me just go through that briefly. And yes, we have the Daily Nation has captured the same on page 8. Kenyan wanted in U.S. for trade in rhino horns ivory arrested, and also has been captured on the Standard newspaper. That is also on page 8 of the same. Quite unfortunate, but also a good move right there towards dealing with the aspect of corruption, the aspect of, poaching, which is something that has been a tussle for us for the longest of time. Let's not delve into that much, but also pick this story that is on the front page of the People Daily. Top security body set to discuss City Hall chaos, and expounding it on the People Daily is captured on page, let's see, here we are, Nairobi Assembly chaos referred to top security body, captured on page 13 of the People Daily, and also no retreat as MCAs vow to take over Governor Sonko. So that one is on page 12 and page 13 of the People Daily. First of all, let's pick this one, Alois, on police brutality. Is this the most brutal police officer? That is one who was dismissed from the force. 30, he's called 30, was this week captured on video, raining blows on a woman that is the MCA of Mlango Kubwa. Now, delving deep into this, first of all, the Nairobi chaos that are ongoing, and coming to the aspect of police brutality. Alois.
Police brutality should always be condemned. Having been a student leader, of course, we've gone through our fair share of police brutality. So when we see such things, it's not new, but also it's not encouraged at all. I must say, though, that we've seen a lot of improvement from the police service. Now they call it a service because it's not a force anymore. But again, it's a wake-up call to the police bosses that we're not where we want to be with our police service. And therefore, they need to look at more training, just basically teaching police officers how to handle civilians, because not everyone who, is out there is a criminal. And even if you're a criminal, then you still have your rights, and you're supposed to be taken to a court of law, not be subjected to corporal punishment. But coming back to Nairobi County, Nairobi County has been a nightmare. Fights day in, day out. The general is fighting with the governor, and these are the results now, seeing two sections of MCAs coming out with opposing opinions. What I think is the president, in his own wisdom, decided to form NMS, and I'm sure it took a lot, and it took a lot of consultations for that to happen. Yeah. So I think the same president needs to bring the general and the governor on board, because at the end of the day, you can't ignore that Nairobians voted overwhelmingly for their governor. So I think it's important that the two are brought together at the same place, where probably at State House, where the same deed of transfer was signed. Bring these two people together and show leadership. And leadership is them agreeing that we're putting our differences aside so that we can work for Nairobi. Because I'd like to genuinely believe that both of them have the best interests of Nairobians at heart.
All right, yes, and there we go. We'll also be discussing that as we proceed. But indeed, also an unfortunate occurrence as captured right there. Boundaries, the next battle among politicians, captured on a page. This is page 2 of should be page 4, 5. That is page 5, yes, of the People Daily on matters IEBC and the boundaries, the next battleground among politicians, as Electoral Commission kicks off process which will entail collecting views from the public, guided by last year's national census figures. and the densely populated, and talks of it. And you know very well, Alois, that the population in different areas highly determines what move for us in terms of, first of all, resources, distribution of resources, and key on matters politics. This has been ongoing for the longest of time. We still do not even have faith on the census results that came out the other day. What way forward in terms of politics, and what does this mean for the politicians who are out there hungry for power?
I think we're still too young and too fresh in terms of the different counties that are there. And if anything, I would still give it another five years or so before we are to go out there and then changing our boundaries again. I think the counties and the constituencies and the wards that we have right now have not really felt the full effects of devolution. And rather than us disrupting the many gains that have been made, I think our focus should be keep them there for now, but work on things like proper revenue allocation. I think those are things that need to be our focus right now, rather than looking at our boundaries again. Of course, that's usually determined by politicians who are hungry for power and maybe looking to add more seats so that they can also, the losers can also, get to be part of the table. But I don't think that's the way we should go. I think we have more important things to focus on right now, and that's just it.
All right, IEBC, before I leave that subject and come to that one of Mkapa, is IEBC in the best of state to take us through an election? Because as it is, the conversation of rooting it out is not ongoing in the ground or making reforms or changes. Is IEBC on standby or set to help us on that?
First of all, many people, including myself, still have a lot of issues with IEBC. If you look at how the last elections, for example, were conducted, we still have so many gaps and that were left, and we're not even sure. IEBC haven't given us a report to tell us that these gaps have actually been filled. So if you look at the mood in the country, and if you look at the conversations around the BBI, which is, well, we're not too sure about the BBI anymore now, but if you look at some of the conversations that were going around, it was actually disbanding or setting up the IEBC differently. So personally, I don't see the IEBC going in the full race. I don't think we'll have the same composition of, at least the same composition of IEBC commissioners and even leadership moving forward.
Well, pretty much unfortunate. We can only hope for the best. And now we cross over to page 4 of the People Daily. Once again, leaders eulogize Mkapa as true patriot, reformist, and the Tanzanian statesman was given a 21-gun salute, the highest national honor for a former commander-in-chief, and laid to rest. That is, of course, in his home in Mount Wara in southern Tanzania. And our leaders were not able, or our delegates were not able to get there. But what will be your words, to the fallen soldier, to the fallen hero, patriot, Pan-African, and, that key figure towards ensuring that we have, at least we enjoy half a bit of East African integration today?
I would, first of all, like to pass my condolences on behalf of me and my entire family to the family of the late president. Mkapa is one of those leaders. First of all, he formed a key figure in bringing peace in Kenya in the year 2007-2008 when we had the post-election violence. That's something as Kenyans will forever be grateful for. But in the same character that many people didn't know that was the case, the late president was a humble man who was not a show-off, and the presidency never became the factor. It was what he did for his people that mattered most to him. So I think as upcoming leaders in Kenya, those are the kinds of leaders that we need to emulate and look towards service delivery rather than power, which is what most of my generation is looking at based on, the people we look up to. So I would say we've lost a great leader. If you look at Tanzania, why Tanzania is the way it is, they might not be as economically strong, for example, as Kenya, but things like unity have always remained at the core, and it's because of leaders like Benjamin Mkapa. So we wish that his soul may rest in eternal peace. And to all future leaders and even present leaders right now, I think we need to shift our focus towards service delivery and actually delivering on our promises to our people.
All right, and of course, may his soul rest in eternal peace. And like you rightfully said, we here at TV47 equally send our condolences to the family and friends. And we now cross again back to the Standard newspaper. There's pretty much an interesting story right here that has been captured on page 10 of the Standard newspaper. It is talking about trained dogs that can sniff out a virus from saliva. It's an interesting piece right here, Alois. I think you need to go through it. But yes, it is interesting that at this point then we can have, dogs that can sniff out and tell you whether indeed you have COVID-19 or not. I mean, Alois, the world is changing. Yeah.
Indeed, the world is changing, and that's brilliant innovation. I mean, if we could have such dogs and we all go back to the Mlolongo system and we line up outside our different places of work and we have these dogs fasting, then things will go a long way in combating the virus.
Mm-hmm. I'd love to know how this is being done, because I mean, I just don't understand at what point they've been trained to that level of being able to detect if someone has COVID-19 or not. And in this case, then it means it's not just COVID-19; they can be trained to detect any other kind of a virus. And that's pretty much interesting. And yes, we only hope that it will be helpful, because I mean, imagine how much tough times we've had trying to figure out the processes of, first of all, the just trying to see to either we are able to test our people. We still have issues with the test processes in the country, and questions being raised as to how well we are able to deal with this. But there's also an interesting story that has been captured on the People Daily that I'd want us to look at. I don't know why we're not able to get a capture of this, but anyway, we cross over to this story about youth being amongst, let me just look at what page it was. I had a look at it, should be, yes, here we are, page 7 of the People Daily. House parties are new alcohol dens. You are a youth. And I would want to say, and I'm not trying to diss out on youth, but it's the reality of the matter. They are the people who are holding house parties anyway. After being told that, yes, we'll not have bars or restaurants selling alcohol, actually bars were ordered to shut down, then we carry the alcohol home and we call everyone. And, it's still the same thing.
Yes, such an unfortunate story, and this boils down again to leadership. We've not been able as leaders, and the leaders haven't been able to create enough activities for young people who are not in school right now. I think it boils down to many different issues. There's leadership, there's parenting. Do parents know what their kids are doing? Do they have enough time to be able to monitor what their kids are doing? But again, as leaders, have we been able to create a good enough environment for kids who are at home to still be able to have activities that they can take up? If you look at most estates, the fields have been grabbed, so kids have nowhere to go and play. If you look at it, there's not enough mentors. When you look at the news and you're seeing, for example, a young leader that you look up to is being arrested for, drinking past curfew hours, then it's clearly a leadership and a systemic problem that we need to tackle. One of the things that I know for sure with the current generation, 50% being under 19, and us not having enough mentors is definitely one of the causes to this. But I think as a young leader, one of the things that I have tried, for example, focusing on is trying to create as many activities around, for example, my area campus, where students can have extracurricular activities which keep them busy, even right now during the COVID period. Ensuring that, for example, keeping kids engaged, giving them enough webinars, just to try and keep them busy, because that's all we can really do. But I think one thing that needs to happen is we need to declare drug and substance abuse as a major problem in Kenya, and this is caused by mental health issues that many young people are going through right now.
Okay, well, pretty much unfortunate there, so to speak. But yes, we can hope that this habit will change. And another story captured on page 13 of the Standard newspaper. Yes, we have the Standard newspaper here, and the lobbying process on ensuring that CS Amina Mohammed, clinches this crucial seat is ongoing. The group says that now, of course, the regional lobby gives CS Amina thumbs up. The group says that Amina's candidature presents an opportunity to drive the reform agenda on matters of international trade. The right figure for that, I know many people out here have said that it is the case, that she's the right person. This time around, going in for the second time. Do you suppose that it's time for Kenya?
I mean, all we can say is go Amina. Amina making it, and even just her trying to get the top seat is shows that any girl, any young person out there can actually aim for not just the top seat in Kenya, but top seats out there, and that it's possible. So I think as a young person and as a young leader, I wish her all the best, and we're like her to know that we're rooting for her 100%.
All right, well, all the best to her. Certainly, that's what we say. And I picked this story also that is very interesting on page 9. It's a tussle that has been going on page 9 of the People Daily, which again will push us to the cartoon editions of the key stories or the key newspapers that we have. Attorney General is now drawn into the Kinoti Haji wars over new criminal laws. And these criminal laws presented as of yesterday in what the DCI was not in agreement to, but the DPP says that this is within our mandate and this is exactly what we're going to do, whether you like it or not. It is said that new guidelines are likely to create confusion within the criminal justice system, and because some of these proposals or some of these guidelines that have been given are contradicting the existing laws that it stands. So a major split has emerged within the various government agencies in the criminal justice system, threatening to scuttle the fight against corruption and other criminal cases. Should we be worried, Alois?
We should be very, very worried, and that's the problem of politicking too much. And I think this has been caused by us as a nation allowing politics to get into everything. For example, if you look at when Kinoti and Haji were working very well seamlessly in the beginning, then we were making great strides towards fighting corruption. But now that politics has started to play, I mean, then we're seeing these things playing out, and of course, both of them are losing their credibility when in front of us as the Kenyans. So I think, again, this is one place where the president needs to crack the whip and tell them, look, whatever your issues are, you sit aside, talk about it, and come up with solutions, because I don't think the issues are too big that they can't be sorted out, especially by the two gentlemen.
All right, it's pretty much unfortunate. Why I said this is going to introduce us to the cartoon edition, though I'm not getting the one that I wanted, that is on the Standard newspaper. The cartoon edition of the Standard newspaper speaks of that point where this MCA was being beaten by policemen. And the question that is ongoing right now is that the DCI is standing somewhere like this. I wish we'd be able to get that from the other side, the cartoon edition of the Standard newspaper. I am not quite sure of the page because my system is buffering. But yes, anyway, before we look at that, as they look at it, or for it, let's take a look at the cartoon edition of the People Daily. But that one, just trying to paint a picture of what it was like, where, yes, there was this beating of the MCA, yet the DCI, the DPP are just standing there watching and how much she is being frustrated. And also right here on the cartoon edition of the People Daily, the leaders we were elected to deliver services are now delivering kicks and blows. Silence, please. Waheshimiwa busy at work. Still on the aspect of the picture that has been painted on matters Nairobi, and our MCAs out there, beating each other, blows and fighting and all this, while the common Mwananchi is busy waiting to see to it whether devolution is going to be a success, whether devolution is going to bring anything good in terms of development for the people. The cartoon editions, what do you make of them?
What I would tell the leaders is they need to look at, I mean, from us, we can laugh at it, but what I'd like to tell them is that a lot of them need to be very careful and change tune towards service delivery and ignoring a lot of the drama and hula baloos that we're seeing. Kenyans are no longer the stupid lot who are just watching and will continue voting for you despite all this nonsense that's going on. I think we're going to see a serious broom sweeping out rogue leaders and leaders who can't be held can't be held accountable. And I look forward to seeing that in 2022. We need to have more sober leaders. We need to elect leaders with a track record who can show us work that they've done before. And any leader who's been misbehaving, need to send them home.
All right, yes, there you go. And they have heard it. I want to believe so. Thank you so much, Alois Lavan Otieno, CEO of Jaram Kenny Youth Organization, for the great insight. And it's now time that we call it a day on the newspaper review and also the stories that we've been going through. And we say kwaheri to you as we cross over to a different segment altogether, where we'll be discussing the issues that are taking center stage right here in the country. After this short break, we welcome you to be part of the conversation. Hashtag Morning Cafe at Linda_Lela at TV47 as we get to sample some of your comments as we proceed with the show. We take that after this break.
Thank you.
right, welcome back to the broadcast. Time for the current affairs segment, and joining me this morning is Charles Munyu, who is a governance expert, as we take a look at the intrigues of what has been taking center stage right here in the country. First, on the revenue stalemate that is ongoing, and of course we take a look at the reforms processes at the level of police and brutality cases that have been registered of late and still being condemned for the longest of time. We ask, why is it that these police officers still would proceed and do what it is that they've been told not to do with so much confidence without caring about the fact that there are cameras around? What really could be informing this level of laxity or bravado? And we also take a look briefly at the squabbles that have been ongoing between the Attorney General, of course, that is the DCI, and the DPP, and what it means for the fight against corruption. Good morning, Charles.
Good morning. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you so much for finding time for us this morning.
Pleasure is always mine.
And we start off with this particular one, of course, the stalemate that has been ongoing. First of all, that is not the key subject that we'll be looking at. We take a look at the handshake and whether indeed it's on trial, the BBI itself, and what way forward. Has Raila been choked to a point whereby, because he wants the interest of the BBI to be fronted or to be pushed, then he's left with no choice but to abide by what he probably would not have done. So we would want to ask whether indeed the handshake still holds water or not, or what way for it, but not before we get to hear your sentiments on the squabbles that have been ongoing in terms of the revenue share.
Yes. Revenue share. I think senators have failed, if you ask me, miserably, because when we devolved, it was not about killing regions. It was about ensuring equitable distribution of resources across the country. And that's why, in the wisdom of those people that drafted the current constitution that we are using, we provided for Article 204 on equalization funds, because there was their appreciation that there were counties that had been historically disadvantaged. And for them to catch up, it was necessary to provide for resources for them to be able to do that, and that is provided for. If senators were serious, what they should have done is increase that amount that is provided for. The percentage that is provided for, 0.5%, might not necessarily be sufficient to bring those counties that are, been disadvantaged in terms of infrastructure, in terms of maybe hospitals, in terms of electricity, water connectivity, and reticulation, and all those things. But now, what has happened is it would seem that something called holding harmless. When you devolve and you start losing resources, courtesy of the being in a devolved setup, then it feels like you don't belong, and that's where those populous counties have a problem with that. And look at it that way: if you are 2.5 million people in a county, or 2.1 like in Nakuru, and 10% of you are getting sick, it means 2,100 people will get sick. As compared to a county with 800,000 people, it's only 80 people that will get sick, and that's what we are talking about. So there's a possibility that the county with a larger population requires more resources so as to be able to sustain the infrastructure that it has, so as to sustain the facilities that they have, be they hospitals, be they schools, be they all these things. But that does not mean those disadvantaged counties historically should not be supported to be able to catch up, for lack of a better way of putting it. So this whole dispute, I think, to me, is premised on the wrong things. And if you ask me, the bottom line here is not really about it's not about resources, if you ask me. It's about politics of 2022. And if you want me to clarify, I'll say this. Article 113 of the Constitution is very clear. To become president, you need 50% of the votes that are cast. And over and above that, 25% of the votes cast in a minimum of 24 counties. So what any presidential candidate will not do is antagonize 10, 15 counties that are disadvantaged by this formula, because when they go campaigning, they will not get the 25% of the votes from those particular counties. And the other issue is, of course, there are senators that want to be governors. They will not pass a bill that provides for a formula that disadvantages the counties that they want to go and seek a position in. Those two issues of politics are the ones that are out there in play, and anything else you hear, and I think Senator Malala was very clear, we will not pass a formula that disadvantages Mombasa, our stronghold, disadvantages the northeastern region, disadvantages Ugamani region. So basically, it's about politics of 2022 to a large extent.
Yes, and politics is what we'll be discussing this morning. But before we get to that, I know you've captured a lot of stuff, and I think this is what is bringing the bone of contention. This is what is being vile in some parts of course, the country. And the question then would be the marginalized, the ones that are supposed to catch up with the rest. What is the guarantee that if awarded, almost an equal share or an equal share, that they will proceed to catch up with the rest? Because remember, this is not the first time that they will be awarded this. This has been ongoing. They probably received almost a proper share for them to come out and, just match up to the rest of the other counties in the country. But such has not been the case. So what is the guarantee? Especially when you talk about the fact that most of these leaders are not even complaining because they have the interest of the people at heart or they want to develop the places, but they're simply complaining for political reasons.
It's very simple. Even the resources that are being received, and this one I'm talking about across the country, all the county governments, and by county government I mean the executive and the assembly, they have failed. The basic functions they were given. Look at education, for instance. We are given ECDs. How many counties in this country can pride themselves of having the more modern ECD facilities? Be they developed counties, be they the marginalized counties. How many can say we have beautiful ECD facilities where kids are being picked from home and to school, given a program? They have a program on lunch. They have a play area. They are doing well. Kids are moving from private facilities to the public facilities provided by the governor. The aspect of the technical colleges, TVETs, in terms of youth polytechnics, how many counties can claim they have that? So essentially what is happening is there is failure on the part of the executive to come up with programs and development programs basically for their respective counties 8 years into devolution. So when we look at these situations, let us not look at only one aspect. Let us look at the fact that people have failed or leaderships have failed to provide for what they were supposed to provide, because devolution is about resources being followed by functions being followed by resources. It's not just resources for the sake of resources. You might be given all the resources that you want, but if you don't come up with programs and implement them as you should, then don't blame the fact that there is a bit of equalization, there is a bit of that. Because I will give you an example. Mango area constructed a hospital in 20 days, a 35-bed capacity hospital. And it's among the 5 counties that have now sufficient isolation facilities, and they have ICUs, 35 of them. And considering Murang'a has only 35 ICU facilities, then it means they are only those ones that are constructed the other day. What about if governors would have been doing this across the country, the 47 counties, all of them doing something like this with the resources that they've been given through the allocation of resources? So essentially what we are saying is, much as we are talking catch-up, there has been failure, miserable failure on the part of the governments, especially the county governments, to come up with these things and do these things. So when the average Kenyan hears we don't have sufficient resources, these are the countries that are straining us in this way, they want to believe that. But trust me, it is bigger than that, if you ask me. But having said that, the equalization fund was meant to bring counties up to par. It is that simple. So, and the reality was, if you don't use a unique formula, a unique fund to bring counties up to par, it will amount to telling other counties, stop, wait for us to get to where you are, then you can continue from that point on. And I think that's not the way it works. It works by way of counties that are up there in terms of infrastructure, in terms of hospitals. They have medicine, they have this, the other one, so that an average person from Murang'a, from Nairobi, can walk into a Kiambu hospital, get services, requisite services, and go home. Because, that's the way it should be. But let us not politicize it. Let us not see it as these counties strangling the other counties. I think if you do it that way, then we'll have lost it.
Let's play the devil's advocate right here. And I'd want to ask this question. You're a governance expert. Sadly, or so to speak, I do not know at what point the electorate, has a say on this, because at some point in time, it all started at the Senate. Then before we knew it, people were out there calling upon Right Honorable Raila Odinga, President Uhuru Kenyatta, to weigh in their sentiment or to give the solution to this. So it is escalating from the point of the Senate and going to the top-notch leadership. So that means they have a say. In this case, first, talk about the electorate. Why is it that there's always that feeling from the electorate or from the people and that push that some of these crucial issues and decisions should be made by these top-notch leaders? Probably leaders that many have argued are the same people that have put us into all the predicaments that we're in today.
It's because of the way our politics is set up. This is politics. So Raila is the leader of ODM and by extension NASA, whether NASA is there or not in reality. But in perception, NASA is there. Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta is the leader of Jubilee, the party. And whatever is happening, remember, even the one man, one vote, one shilling, and by BBI by extension, is crafted between the two gentlemen and then given to everyone else to appreciate and accommodate. So essentially, they have a lot of say on what happens in as far as their respective senators are concerned, or the senators that are from their respective political parties. And what they are trying to say is, we know, especially on the part of ODM, there is an upcoming election and your candidate, I want to believe Raila is. So how does this play out for you? How does it play out to the best of your interests in terms of that particular pursuit of the presidency? In terms of Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, what is your position on this? And you've noticed Uhuru has been hands-off largely on this issue. Just his concern is that if you don't pass this formula one way or the other, so that the allocation of revenue bill can go to him for ascending into law, then counties will not have even a coin, because the formula that was there expired end of last month. So Uhuru's concern is that Raila has an interest in terms of the stakes, when Masai Land, when Northeastern, those are his strongholds. So essentially what they are trying to ask is, let us stand guided on this issue, so that much as we are making the decision on resource allocation, because it impacts on the politics of the country and especially political policies of the respective region, how does that play out? And to me, that is also not a very good thing. I think what we must look at as a Senate is a Senate that represents, because the moment you become a senator, you're not a senator per se over this particular county. Much as it's the one that elected you to the county, to the Senate. You become a senator for the country, and that's why you make laws and decisions that affect all of us. So what must happen is that we must start becoming patriotic. We must start understanding that if you are sick and you're in Nairobi, before you get to Mandela for treatment, you will have gone through the hospitals in Nairobi, passed through Kiambu, gone through Murang'a. If you're in Machakos, the same thing will happen. You'll want to get sorted out in Machakos before you try and look for maybe your home county, as it were. So we need to appreciate that population counts for a lot, and that is a fact. Population counts for a lot. But having said that, it should not be that population is everything, and I think that's why we provide for other parameters in terms of how we arrive at the figures that are being given out there. But in terms of the leadership of this country, it cannot be ignored.
And all right, why I said we are playing the devil's advocate is, one, because I felt like, sometimes we say that leaders politicize issues so much, yet we're the ones who push them to want to know what it is that their take is in regards to issues that are of interest to the people. But equally, on the events that took center stage, the last bit, we probably expected that Tuesday would have been it. And, the senators would have come out probably endorsing what it is that their key leaders have endorsed. But we saw the same scenario playing out where, some of the senators felt like this isn't fair, others felt like this is fair, and eventually they could not get a solution to it. For the very first time, do you suppose then that they had the interest of the people such that they had to overlook what it is that their leaders are proposing, just so they would debate and argue and find an ultimate solution that will be friendly to Wanjiku?
For the senators that, quote unquote, are claiming that their counties are going to lose money, and I think, remember, this formula has come about, the fact that the amounts are reduced is because the amount that was expected to go to counties is slightly less. It's 316 billion. If it was 350 billion, 400 billion, no county would be losing, as it were. So the problem is that the cake has remained the same, if not slightly smaller. The discussions that were in the Senate are healthy. I think for the first time in this country, Kenyans are involved in a discussion around allocation of revenue. I wish they were also involved in a discussion around division of revenue, because that's where it all starts. Money that goes to counties, money that remains with the national government. So what happened is that initially it started very well. because each senator would want to go into that particular meeting or into the Senate and discuss how their respective counties will get as much as possible. And because you are elected by the people to bring resources to them. But now, the fact that you are seeing some senators claiming that I am doing this for the rest of the country, I am doing this because I don't want my brother on the other side to lose out. That tells you that is when the point at which politics moved in.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you'll find Cheragai, one of the senators in Rift Valley, saying, I'm supporting this. Murkomen saying, I am not supporting this. And you know, Murkomen is the face of William Samoei Ruto. That's a fact. When you see Orengo saying, I am not supporting this, much as he votes this way or the other one, or Malala saying, I'm not supporting this, then you are reminded very quickly that is the face of Raila Odinga. And there is a policy here of 2022 on how do we explain to Northeastern when we go campaigning, and remember you need 24 counties, 25% of the votes cast in them to become president. How do we explain to them how we presided over a formula that disadvantaged them? So the discussions were very healthy. Kenyans have come on board. Unfortunately, I don't even think many Kenyans understand the bills or the motions as they are. They don't understand what the Kamangata motion is all about. They don't understand what the CRA formula is exactly and the differences therein. They don't even understand maybe what the Senator of Nairobi is bringing. And I think what needs to happen is we also need to help Kenyans understand this issue so that they can understand what are these issues, what are the differences in terms of the amounts involved. So that at the end of the day, we advise our people. They're holding brief for us, as it were. So we advise them: don't fight over this. Don't procrastinate this for forever. Decide on this, work on it, and then we move on. Because as we have looked at the figures, and it's not like they're that fundamental, if you ask me. So I think there is also an aspect of Kenyans not really getting involved in these things, other than reading what is being said out there, listening to their elected leaders, and sometimes when you raise it with politics, then you end up with
and on that very note, Charles,
yes.
Probably the politicians are taking advantage of the ignorance of the Kenyans to polarize the entire thing and, whip emotions, and it is actually working to their favor. The question then would be, who is to go out there and let the common Mwananchi understand what this is all about? What this would mean, what all these processes are, what are the parameters that are being projected? Who is to do that?
I think ultimately, and we'll come here, we'll discuss a formula called a voting system called proportional representation. Because even if that money goes to Kiambu County, for instance, when you have 60 wards, every MCA would want the biggest chunk of that money to go to their respective wards. Every MP in a county would like all the resources, all the police stations, everything, all the schools to go to their respective constituencies. Because we have this thing of wanting to represent this smaller unit that we feel we identify with, that we feel is the one that has taken us to these positions of power. But the moment we draw a line and say now it's about Kiambu having 12 MPs, the likes of Mwaura, who is nominated today, but who cuts across. Mwaura will represent a disadvantaged person in Mombasa, a disadvantaged person in Kakamega. It does not matter. When he comes up with bills, when he makes these decisions, it is not really about him. When he talks about Kiambu, he talks about Kiambu generally and the region generally. And I think those are the kind of leadership we want, that can only be guided through the voting system that we have. The one we have, where the winner takes it all, has a way of people wanting to be the first past the post, and that's where this situation we find ourselves in. But having said that, I think we must get to a point where the first thing first, this procrastination must end. The Senate must make a determination one way or the other.
Okay.
Secondly, we need to understand CRA, Commission on Revenue Allocation. There was the courts pronounced themselves on this issue, I think the Supreme Court. What is the use of a commission that comes up with resolutions that are not binding to a large extent? It's a commission. The Judicial Service Commission comes up with 40 judges, 41 judges. We want the president to sign blindfolded. Don't tax them. The Commission on Revenue Allocation comes up with a formula. We want to shred it, to come up with something completely different from what they had. Yet even the courts making that proclamation said, you cannot ignore them. How can you not ignore them when you say the lawmaking function is a function of the Senate or the National Assembly, as it were, Parliament. So I think these are the intrigues and the bigger picture that we need to resolve as a country, so that if we have a commission that makes a determination on these issues, that is a constitutional commission, as it were, then let their findings and their decision be final to some extent.
And now that you say that whichever way, the Senate should at least come with a solution to this, we're looking at two proposals that have been presented. Of course, the Kangata one that was shot down, and also the Sakaja one coming. In comparison, do you suppose then that the Sakaja one is going to carry the day? And if not so, then what would be the other best or ultimate, parameters that we should approach towards getting a solution to this? Because like you said, the levels of the county, things are not working. And that stalemate is the last thing that we would want to experience if at all we want to have devolution moving and, counties functioning as expected.
I think the only issue I have with the Kangata motion is that they wanted to defer it for 2 years. I do not think it's necessary to defer these issues. If you make a decision now, what you need to do is immediately have a meeting with the executive, provide for resources in terms of equalization, so that any county that has made plans on these issues can be able to be resolved in the course of the financial year. But when you defer a formula, then 2 years later, the dynamics will completely change. And then there will be another Senate anyway. 2022, there will be another Senate, and that is 2 years from now. So someone can even go to court and say, we are the ones that are supposed to preside over this formula every 5 years. The 5 years are ending last week or last month. So this formula, so those are the dynamics. But the reality is, if you ask me, the Kangata formula is not a bad one. If you look at it critically without any bias, I have a problem with anybody who is trying to use population, the 2009 census population resource, because that has been overtaken by events, and it will only take someone going to court. We cannot again have a Bureau of Statistics that is given us a population through a census process that has not been challenged by anyone in the competent court of law. And those are the figures that are being actually used by government today, both levels of government, in terms of all these planning issues that they have. You cannot take us populations of 2009 for whatever political expediency. So anybody trying to imagine that we can go back in terms of the population, then what stops us from going back then 20, 30 years back in terms of the population that you use for purposes of planning? So I think they must agree, number one, the population that is there, the one that we had the other day, the census results, those are the ones to use. Then from that point on, we look at which counties have made these budgetary provisions and how do we mitigate against the fact that they'll get slightly less. And then we move on from that. And then maybe structure is in such a way that that equalization fund is sufficient to be able to be taking care of these things. And as the country grows, because again, let us not hold some counties at ransom for political expediency.
All right. That aside, now let's get into the political aspect of it. And Kangata himself, pulling out the blackmail card, where if you do not proceed to support this, then we're not going to support the handshake. We're not going to support the BBI. First of all, looking at this, does it speak of BBI as squarely and purely a Raila's project, a Raila's, interest, for lack of a better word?
I think BBI, if you remember Bomas, everyone supported the BBI. The report that initially there was a problem, but the report that was done by the team was supported by everyone. Everyone said this is a good Raila Odinga, Uhuru Kenyatta, William Ruto, Kalonzo Musyoka, all of them at Bomas. They said this is a great document. And do you know one of the things contained in that document is the aspect of one man, one vote, one shilling. The 1 man, 1 shilling aspect is about, fair allocation of resources. And I think that's what Kangata is alluding to. He's saying, if you appreciated that the team did a good job, they gave us a good report, and they say there is an unfair way that this cake is not being shared out fairly, and everyone agreed to it, having looked at the 9 agenda issues, they said this is okay. So if this formula is attempting to resolve that in a small way, and you are rejecting it, then the region that was in this BBI, because each region or maybe a cluster of regions had different issues that interested them in BBI. And in terms of the weight they gave to those issues, it was slightly bigger than or higher than the weight they gave on other issues. There are regions that are only keen on matters who becomes the prime minister, how do we provide for this. The regions that are populous were very keen on how resources are allocated. So when a formula attempts to address that and then is shut down, and then we go back 10 years back and say let us go back there, then to that region, that process of BBI stops losing having meaning. And I think that's what Kanata was saying. Let us address this issue of revenue allocation now that we have gotten an opportunity, even before we draft bills that will ultimately end up being referendum questions for purposes of amending the constitution. Otherwise, you'll find yourself with 4 questions. One of them is about resource allocation. The other one is about the amendments in terms of how Parliament operates. And people that you're working with, agreeing on, will shoot down the aspect of revenue allocation and maybe push through the other aspect. So he was saying the regions will get disinterested on issues of BBI to that extent. Yes.
But one would, in as much as we would want to say that these, 2 issues are, have more or less the same face in terms of what they propose ultimately, the increase also in terms of matters sharing of revenue, BBI proposing from 15% to 35%. So while they would have the same face value eventually, the question then would be, why is it that we should have Kangata coming on board in broad daylight, pointing a finger? And from the look of things, the reason why Kangata did this is because there were likelihoods, or there was a picture that was painted by the Right Honorable Raila Odinga that probably he is not for the proposal that is being presented by Jubilee or by the president, so to speak. So in such a scenario, do you suppose that, again, the handshake is in trial? Because then we've seen other scenarios at that time of, the elections in Kibra. In numerous occasions we've seen the handshake in trial, and, President Uhuru Kenyatta being forced to dance to the tune of ODM for the sake of the handshake. So in this case, do you suppose that Right Honorable Raila Odinga will be genuine to endorse what it is that the president, presents, in as much as maybe he probably would not be for the whole idea?
I think to be fair to Kangata, he spoke before Raila gave his position on this issue. I think Raila gave his position a day or 2 later. And it is good the 2 leaders, Uhuru Kenyatta, Raila Odinga, and even Ruto, to a large extent, have not, given a position publicly on this issue, and not until it got to a point where now it was necessary for them to do so. What I'm trying to say is, if you increase the allocation to 35%, and then the formula to share that out to counties is such that it's disadvantaging the populous counties, then the whole thing loses meaning. If one of the 9 shared objectives is to ensure devolution is strengthened, yet the respective regions that have been complaining about being strained of resources get even less, relatively less, or comparatively less, then that is what Kangata is talking about. It's not really about blackmail. He's saying we have agreed in terms of BBI, and it's provided for in BBI in words that 1 man, 1 vote, 1 shilling is something that must be implemented. That is clear, like day and night. So what Kangata is saying, that particular aspect of BBI loses meaning. The reason as to why those regions are very antagonistic and not happy about even all these things, because BBI was to identify issues that have been troubling us for a very long time. 9 issues were identified and shared out as shared objectives between Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta, and by extension, Ruto, Kalonzo, and all the other leaders of Tangula. So, if this is one of the issues that nobody is attempting to resolve, and any attempt to do so is shot down, and those presiding over the shooting down are party to the whole arrangement that we have, then that right there becomes a problem for the region. And that is what Kangata was expressing. This is not about blackmailing anybody, it's just stating a fact that is there. It's like saying the Pope is Catholic. It is true, the Pope is Catholic.
Well, okay. Well, that's an interesting view right there. But then as we get to wind up on this subject, do we genuinely need to have to wait for the president or Right Honorable Raila Odinga or even Deputy President William Ruto to speak for us to get to know their position, or we can almost tell what it is their position based on the people that speak?
I think we know their position. When you see Honorable Senior Counsel Rengo, you see Raila. I mean, don't see anybody else. When you see Murkomen, you are seeing William Samoei Ruto, and it's that simple. And like I told you, that's Article 138 of the Constitution that provides for 25% votes in a minimum of 24 counties is the one that is taken us to this level. Anything else would have had this formula passed a long time ago. Those two gentlemen, especially Raila and Ruto, are wondering how they'll be able to talk to their people when they go campaigning in 2022. It's as simple. And Malala yesterday, I think, talked about it. He said, we cannot preside over a formula that disadvantages the coast, disadvantages Ukambani, disadvantages the northeastern region. This is a political process, much as it's also an issue of resources for the counties. And I think that is the point at which the senators are losing it, because you cannot do that and at the same time want to tell us that BBI is on in terms of the resource aspect issue, because this does not mean we will not fight corruption. BBI, the fight against corruption must continue. Unifying this country must continue. But all these issues play out. When you talk about resource allocation, the issue of unity of the country is also touched, because it is a big factor and it influences all those issues. So I think, to me, senators must now make a decision, and the right decision based on the understanding of these things. And it's not just a decision in terms of this formula, it is a decision on even the equalization fund. How do they use that equalization fund? And more importantly, how do they supervise to ensure that that equalization fund actually works? You need to know, for the last 8 years, how many counties have been receiving equalization fund? What have they done about it? Maybe it is time that there was better supervision of that particular aspect and slightly more resources in that direction, so that those counties can be able to now come up with the infrastructure that they are lacking, that they are doing. The other aspect that can also work is sitting down with the national government, especially the president, so that we can also have national programs, through the national authorities, to be able to have infrastructure development in those particular areas, hospitals, all these things, so that they grow, they get to a point where now everyone feels like you actually belong.
All right, we have some bit of an interesting feedback right here, which is pretty long. I may not be able to go through it. From John Achidias, says, President Uhuru Kenyatta has never lost a bill in Parliament, even during the controversial security bills. Onesmus Kipchumba Murkomen, Susan Kihiga, Eden Dwale, and Benjamin Washali ensured that the president's agenda carried the day. The Kangata formula was the first time the president's agenda was lost on the floor. Make no mistake, those who voted for the president's agenda. I don't want to go through it because it's interesting. It's pretty much long. Probably trying to paint a picture of the fact that, yes, Tanga were the ones who were holding the president. Now that officially Tanga is out, is the reason why there is a failure on the same. So whether Murkomen voted yes or no is irrelevant. Assuming they voted yes, the result would still have been 24 votes to 23 votes. The motion would still be lost. Why is it that the president is losing at this time? I've not read the entire message, but I've picked the ones that I know would be of interest at this point on the discussion that we are having.
I don't think the committee's bill has, or rather the committee's formula has been voted on.
Has failed just yet.
No, it has not been voted on. And I think that's why we are saying Kenyans need to interact with these things. What happened is that Kangata had proposed an amendment so that we defer the implementation of this for 2 years. And I think that was what was defeated on the floor of the Senate. And so we need to interact with these things. The version of the formula as provided by the committee is still there for voting on. And if it's presented as the one, if they don't agree, and then they present that one, because they can present that one, they can present the CRA one, they can also present the one Sakaja I think is going to move next. So I think Kenyans need to understand nobody has been defeated. And on top of that, let us stop this politics of seeing the individuals, this one lost, the other one lost. I mean, come on, we understand politics, and when it comes to a situation like this where there is transition, all these things happen. You'll find those guys singing Raila today, next week they'll be singing someone else. Those singing Ruto today will be singing a totally different song, and that's allowed in politics. So, but for now, what is key and what is important is this formula, so that we can have a bill passed into law, so that counties can have their resources.
And Masood Njoroge asks, Kenya, do you think that Kenya should consider reducing the number of counties, probably merging some of them?
Yeah, I want to believe it should happen. But if we cannot be able to allocate resources to the ones that exist, can you imagine being told you're going to merge on the basis of population? That is going to create a lot more hullabaloo in terms of the politics around it. So I think we need to also pursue workable solutions. And one of the workable solutions is that, yes, these counties are disadvantaged. There are facilities that they don't have. How can we fast track their having that without affecting the other counties that have already taken off, and they need to sustain what they have in terms of infrastructure, in terms of facilities, in terms of capacity. Okay.
All right, let's close on that one, because it's a conversation that is ongoing. Developing Story will always be gathering as much information on the same, and we get to weigh in on the same right here on a Morning Cafe. But we cross over to a different, subject altogether. This is in regards to Nairobi County and, what it is that we've been treated to throughout the week in regards to the differences that we witnessed between the leadership, and even worse, the occurrences that took center stage. That is the day before yesterday. And again, the face of brutality, or police brutality, police torture in that case, coming in broad daylight. First of all, before we even weigh in on the same, what do you make of the leadership wrangles within Nairobi County?
I think they are very disheartening. Yeah. They're extremely disheartening, and it's an example of how leadership has miserably failed in that particular county. All sovereign authority belongs to the people, be it executive, legislative, or judicial. So when you're fighting like that, clobbering each other to death, locking each other in offices, who are you representing? Who is that is so keen on you doing these things, to the extent that they have given you the authority to do these things, to kill each other, literally, as it were, to dignify each other to that extent? I think there is failure in terms of leadership at both levels in that particular place. And in other jurisdictions, in other countries, people would resign from their position for such things, because it's an embarrassment. How do you get proud to be a Nairobian at a time like now? How now? And this is not about a project. This is not about this or the other. The average Nairobian does not even understand what the fights are all about. They do not understand why it is so important to do the things that are being done at a time like now. Coming, shortly after they started seeing a bit of progress in terms of the implementation of programs in Nairobi, the roads being worked on, water being provided, garbage being collected. They cannot understand why things have escalated to this point, and who is benefiting from all these issues. And I think that needs addressing very seriously as an issue for Nairobi County.
All right, and yes, that's pretty much unfortunate. It's a conversation that is still ongoing, but coming to the face of brutality that we witnessed the other day, and Matiang'i weighing in his sentiments on the same, condemning what it is that happened, and equally saying that, they should cut across and confiscating some of the arms from the MCAs. First of all, MCAs really, while we know very well that they are leaders, you find that very many of them have arms. And what does it speak about the leadership that we have today?
I think that's what we are saying. If you feel so insecure within the presence of the assembly, to the extent that you need to have a firearm, I think then you are saying there is fundamental failure in terms of how we operate. That is a house where you go represent people, talk about the issues of your respective wards. That is a house where you make laws so that it can help, in improvement of the lives of the people. That is where you oversight, you confirm the governor is doing the right thing, the CECs are doing the right things. That is not a point, that is not a place where you go to fight. That's not a place where you're going for a boxing match. That's not even a place where you operate, with thugs. In fact, it is such that an average me and you cannot get to that assembly. So when you're feeling insecure with your own colleagues around you, that you with the functions, with a clear mandate on what you're supposed to do, then that tells you that from the word go, that's a failed particular assembly. And having looked at what happened, the indignity that was there, and this is not just about the police officer, even everything around it. Anybody looking at that from across the world, it will be very, very disappointed. Because you can shout at each other, you can do all these things, but it should not get to a point where it requires that the police come in literally to do that. And more important, even the police cannot do what happened. Remember, you take personal responsibility. Every time you indignify someone, every time you do something that borders on a criminal act, then that is personal responsibility. It is not about the force, the service, it's you doing those things, because your instructions are very clear. You arrest, and even in arresting, you arrest in a dignified way. And I think that is an issue that is under investigation, and ultimately you'll find people taking the fall for that. People getting into trouble for that. In the name of trying to resolve a problem, you create another problem, and then everyone, the police force that is working so hard, the police service rather, looks wrong. And we have very, very good officers out there doing a great job, protecting all of us under very difficult circumstances. And then 1, 2, 3 individuals act in a manner that embarrasses all of them and makes them, we are talking about local police officers, we're talking about this and the other one. And every time you do something wrong, people will remember that more than they'll remember anything else that you've done. However much you've done in terms of good acts.
I have watched this video not once, not twice, not thrice, just to get and pick some of the words also that were being thrown at that particular time. And equally just reminding us of where at some point in time, again, there was such a scenario in Nairobi County, and this very MCA that we're talking about at some point was saying, piga shoot here, as in she was trying to say, these people are bad. I probably just referring to MCAs that were not on the same side with her. And she was encouraging the policemen to proceed and be radical on this MCA. Same scenario a year or so later, and one listens to this video, the latest video, and at some point in time, one of the policemen saying, Mezoya, like this is, as in, this is now getting to a point whereby it's too much. Do you suppose then that in a way this policeman was probably justified, or these policemen were justified to act in the manner which they did? Because they feel like, it is just getting out of hand. The leadership feels like, they are way above the law and they proceed to do heinous acts that are not called for. Why not have a boardroom conversation in regards to addressing these issues as opposed to coming out and getting radical?
I think it's good to be clear. You cannot commit a crime in the name of solving a criminal act. And it's true. When the right to picket, the right to demonstrate, the right to petition is provided for in the Constitution. It's a right that people have. But with a rider, that you do it unarmed and peaceably. You cannot cause chaos. Your right stops where mine starts. So you cannot attempt to literally, physically eject me from an office. And that's when I call the police so that they can arrest you for committing that particular offense. So what we are trying to say is that much as we are saying the police did this, the other one did this, even the MCAs must appreciate that they are the ones that make the laws. When you make laws, you naturally get reminded to abide by them. I mean, you cannot be the ones making laws for us. Then you're not following those laws. You understand that picketing, in some countries, they even provide for areas where you can go and picket or demonstrate and do this thing, because they know the issue. The issue is about sending the message out there that we are not happy about the way these things are happening in this way. And remember, we have options. In the event that has not worked, or even together with that, you can have someone removed. It is in the public domain that the speaker has been removed before. There has been an attempt to remove the governor, as it were. Those are provided for in the law, and they'll be supervised by competent courts. So what we are trying to say is this thing of acting outside the law simply because you want to shortcut. This thing of thinking that removing someone physically from the office and ejecting them and blocking the doors is what becomes the solution must stop. We must come up with clarity and declare that this is not how to go about it. Because much as you remove me, eject me physically from the office, all you need are a few thugs and crooks, and they'll be able to get me out of the office. How can you? Judges, you know, it's akin to saying judges should be walking around with 20 policemen because they jail thugs. You know, and that's not the way it should be. You should appreciate that power the judge has comes from the people. The power the speaker has, the power the governor has comes from the people. And the people provided for a process through which you can get rid of these people in the event they are not doing what they're supposed to do.
Are there special cases in the forces now that we're talking about MCS, and some of them sort of enjoy some level of power? And you know, remember at some point in time also Elachi being considered as a project of the system, and you know, in this case probably informing why she's making such radical solutions with no fear. And yes, there were likelihoods that maybe she will not find her way back into the office, but eventually she carried the day into the office. Looking at our report right here, someone is asking whether this policeman, John Mwaniki, that is the most radical person in the police force, once dismissed from the force, and the senior police officer who was captured on Tuesday brutally assaulting a member of the National Assembly, County Assembly, in, of course, a new controversy. It says that John Mwaniki Thathi, as an Assistant Inspector General, has been dismissed from the service in September 2013 over drunkenness and insubordination. So not the first time that he is caught on the wrong side. And if you listen again to the video, you would see the kind of confidence that was there. And I keep asking myself, where would they get such confidence amid all these cameras around, you know, members of the media are around, capturing that assertion? But still, these policemen have forgotten the previous weeks we've been talking about police brutality, and they would proceed to go do this. One, the question would be, what could be informing this? You know, stability in terms of mental stability, in terms of how, of course, they are being taken care of. We've had very many times people arguing that the police are not in the best of shape, that makes them have lots of bile or hold a lot of grudge in them. Or one would want to understand, is there a hand that is protecting these policemen, that he knows very well that, after all, there's nowhere you're going to take me?
Well, the fact that someone has been suspended, then that is telling. And now that we don't have the facts in terms of the suspension documents, letters, we cannot know what the conditions were therein, to the extent that now the guy got back to office. What we can say is this: every time you commit an offense or a crime of this nature, you take personal responsibility. And it's not about the videos being shown. It's about you literally clobbering an MCA, beating them up, and there's no evidence that your life was in danger at that particular point. And I think that is something that needs to be looked at, so that, because if this is a problem that needs to be resolved as quickly as possible. And it's not just about the particular officer. I think we have moved from far, you know, up to where we are now. There's a lot of dignity in terms of the general police service that you find across this country, and I think we must not lose sight of that. We used to experience this for quite a while. I mean, for quite a lot of this in the past. We used to have a lot of people getting into a lot of trouble from the police, privately and publicly, on matters of this nature. But that has changed. But there are still a few elements here and there that don't seem to have caught up, you know, in terms of understanding that things have changed. And those are the ones that are repeatedly doing some of these things. It would be unwise on Kenyans in general to blame all these police officers, because they are the same police officers that will be taking care of us tonight and tomorrow, the day after. And when you get thugs coming to your place, they are the same people you call. Let us put it this way: any police officer who is not doing what needs to be done in the way provided for in law and in training, then that is what you're calling a rogue police officer, and they get dealt with, and the provisions are there on how you deal with such individuals. But also, having said that, as a people, as a community, we also need to be able to avoid some of these situations that get to a point where even if the police do not get there, you know, there is a possibility in the business of ejecting someone, you can kill them. People can die as you get into this business of you want to remove this person. You've heard Matiang'i saying some of these people are armed, they have weapons. And in the past, you've seen people shooting, even people that we thought were very sober and normal individuals. So I think it is a balancing act where we must not create this situation unless it just happens and there is no control whatsoever. And importantly, those that come in to resolve them, they must only use requisite force that is required by the situation at hand. It should not be excessive force. But if someone's life is in danger, then the law allows them to do this or the other one. But we cannot see the kind of things that we are seeing. And to me, both sides are to blame. The people that created this situation, to the extent that the police were called to get to this level, and the people who responded and did not act within the confines of what would be considered reasonable.
All right, so of course, upon that order by Interior CS Fred Matiang'i, IPOA also took up the issue, and the relevant authorities took up this issue. Investigations being conducted, and we certainly hope that justice will be served on the same. Charles Munyui, governance expert, thank you so much for the great insights this morning. That's where we're going to wind up this session on current affairs. It was great having you and looking forward to have you some other time. And also thank you so much to the viewer for keeping us company and for the great feedback, which we won't be sampling because we're crossing over to a different segment altogether, where we want to talk to the mothers out here, and we want to introduce you to understanding the importance of, having proper prospect of winning your baby at that time you get to introduce them after exclusive breastfeeding. Interesting show lined up for you. Keep it right here. We'll be right back with more after this break. Well, welcome back to Morning Cafe. We're in the last laps where we talk about winning baby or baby winning, which is very, very important. I'm sure the mothers will be out there sitting and ready to listen, because every other time it's a learning process, because you find that, babies are different. Some of them would love food, some of them would not love food. So every other time that you have a baby, it won't be the same experience. So that's the reason why constantly you need to feed yourself with information and information from specialists for that matter. Times are changing. Years and years back, you could breastfeed your baby, and the next week you're feeding them with porridge, the next week you're feeding them with food stuff and all that. But times have changed. Today, you have to exclusively breastfeed for 6 months, which is something that mothers are struggling to adapt to. But then again, for those who have, will tell you it's the best thing to do ever. So today, we would want to focus on winning baby, introducing them to meals, to foods after breastfeeding. Reminder that next week will be World Breastfeeding, week, yes, and we'll be having a session on the same, which is pretty much important. I'm only hoping that the guest of the day will be willing enough to come over again to discuss the issues of breastfeeding when it is that particular time. But before we get to that, let's first of all, start from where we probably would have ended from, and we introduce you to the processes of winning your baby and how best you can do this. Joining me this morning is a lactation expert, that is Esther Kimani, who's going to take us through this session as we get to understand how you introduce your baby to weaning and how best you do it, and what are the types of foods that they're supposed to take to ensure that they are in the best of shape health-wise. Good morning, Esther. Esther, good morning. I can see Esther, but I'm not able to hear her. But it's obvious that you can hear me very well, Esther, right? Allow us to fix that audio so I'm able to have a proper communication and transition of this session. That is very important. Remember, like I said, it's all about the mothers out there. It is your time to listen to this. And actually, it's not even about the mothers, it's about everyone. If you're a nanny, you're left with a baby at home. You are a dad, you're left with a baby at home. In most cases, the flaws and the faults that we do when we introduce the babies to food are the ones that cause some of these diseases, lifestyle diseases for that matter, conditions for the babies. You don't want to have your baby with marasmus. You don't have to have your baby with kwashiorkor, just because you are not able to balance the meals, just because you are not able to give them the best of meals. It is time that you get to learn. You get to know the best of foods that you can give or you introduce your baby to, and steps by steps, and what will be good for them, what would not be good for them, to avoid supplements for that matter. I have seen very many mothers having to resort to supplements so they are able to have their baby in the best of shape. Malnutrition is an issue right now that is also a global issue for that matter, and the world out there coming to us ensuring that they speak matters nutrition, they speak matters food security, they speak matters proper food and proper feeding to ensure that our babies do not end up in matters of malnutrition. So it's a conversation that is ongoing right here in the country, and we want us to get it in the best way possible to ensure that the mothers are well catered for. So do we have Esther now? We're almost getting to her, right? As we take a look at that, I invite you to be part of this discussion. Hashtag Morning Cafe at Linda_Lela at TV47KE, that is on Twitter, or on our Facebook pages. We'll be sampling some of the comments that you dropped there. If you have questions for Esther this morning, she'll be here to get to answer them. And also the numbers that are rolling down on your screen, the SMS short code 22047. You can drop in your messages and we sample them, or you can as well call us live 07680955, the number that is right down on your screen, and you get to, of course, tell us what it is that you feel or what you think about the conversation. Yes, 0768095491, the number that is down on your screen. And Esther is here to, of course, answer some of these crucial questions. Before we get a hold of her, it's important that I do not speak or expound so much about it. We have her already. I think it is not about me, it is about her as a specialist. Esther, are you there now?
Hello, how are you?
Now I can hear you very well. Good. Thank you for finding time for us this morning.
Yes.
All right, so how do I get to know that baby is ready to stop breastfeeding and to start weaning?
So actually at 6 months, they should not stop breastfeeding.
Yeah.
They should continue. The term we actually use nowadays is called complementary feeding, meaning that we are complementing breast milk. Breast milk still remains the main food for the baby. So we complement breast milk so that the baby now start adding a bit of solids into their diet.
Yeah.
But basically, they should not eat too much. So breast milk continues. And we are slowly coming out from that term called weaning to more of complementary feeding. So we know if the baby is ready to start eating. Number one, if they're able to sit, they're able, when you put them up, they're able to prop themselves up and sit. Secondly, they need to have double their birth weight. So let's say they were born at 6 kilos, they need to be, at 3 kilos, they need to be around 6 kilos. They were born at 4.5, they, whichever kilos they were born, they need to have doubled or almost doubled it. They should be able to do a press up. When you put them down on their belly, they should be able to lift themselves up and do a press up. And of course, they should be interested in food. So when they see you eating, they should be, like trying to swallow around with you, follow the food with their eyes, and really start grabbing your spoon. So all those are good signs that your baby is ready to start eating solids. Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so how do I start the process is one thing that is very important. Like you said, some mother would decide, done with breastfeeding, let's get to food, and that's it. But you put it rightfully, you put it so well that, that is not the end of breastfeeding. That is just the point where you start complementary feeding. So how do I start winning?
So the things that we consider when we start feeding our babies is that we start feeding them because there's a shortfall in breast milk. Breast milk stops being quite enough, and we need to add a bit of solids that will help the baby get what you call a balanced diet. And the three things that are actually lacking, number one is energy. So energy is lacking enough in breast milk, and that's why you'll find that the baby does not seem to be quite satisfied at 6 months. They need to eat a bit more. So the high energy foods are basically what you should start with. So high energy foods come from carbohydrates or starches, and we usually say that we should feed the baby from the family foods. And every community, there's a way that there's a staple food that every community eats. And for most of us in Kenya, our staple foods are either porridge, which is ugali flour, or rice flour or oat flour, depending on your community. Some communities, it's starches like potatoes, like, matoke. So whichever staple food that you eat as a community, that should be one of the things that you can introduce your baby to. The other thing is iron. And most of us do not give our babies foods rich in iron, and it's important for you to start giving because there's not enough iron in breast milk, and by 6 months your baby starts to require you to eat the foods that are rich in iron. And the richest sources of iron are things like chicken, fish, chicken liver, for example, green leafy vegetables, other proteins like beans and dengu, and the local proteins that we eat. It's important to start especially by the end of the 6 months, because they'll be lacking in that. We should also give them a wide variety of vegetables, because the third that's missing from breast milk is vitamin A, and we get it a lot from the colors of the rainbow, the foods that are colorful. Things like pumpkin, which is a vegetable, by the way, it's not a starch. Things like
carrots,
carrots, the colors of the rainbow, the green leafy vegetables. And for you to get vitamin A from those foods, you need to cook the food with oil. So basically what I'm saying, you need to start introducing small amounts of a fully balanced diet, foods that cook with oil, starches, so that your baby can get the variety.
All right, let me ask this question. Sorry, allow me to ask this question. First of all, you speak of oil and everyone thinks, oh, maybe that's not the best time to introduce baby to oil, and you always want to boil foodstuff for the baby. So preparation is key in this case. The foods that you've mentioned right there, most of them are sort of hard food. I'm imagining, how do I get my baby to have meat or beef? How do I get them to enjoy fish? Well, fish could be fair enough, but even still at 6 months, they probably do not even have teeth. So how do you prepare these meals to ensure that they are soft enough, they are good enough for the babies?
Yes. Okay, so you look at forms of, and that's why like some foods like chicken, tends to be pretty easy because if you shred it into very small pieces, you can actually prepare this food. Remember I said that the baby should be introduced to the family staples. So you need to prepare the food in a way that is almost like yours, similarly to yours. So fry the food. Let's say you're doing potatoes and a bit of chicken and a bit of vegetables. So you can take a carrot grater and grate the vegetables so that in a very small amount. You can take some of the oil, fry the food, put a bit of water and soup, and then mash with a fork. So that food becomes soft enough for the baby to chew, because the baby is able to chew very, very little lumps. They can handle a bit of texture. The food needs to be thick enough to drop from a spoon and not pour. And then at the end of the meals that you're giving the baby is just 2 to 3 tablespoons, 2 or 3 times a day at 6-month feed. So it's not a lot of food. So it's about 2 to 3 tablespoons. The rest of the time, the baby is supposed to take milk. It's supposed to continue taking breast milk or whichever milk they've been taking from when they were born. So that basically you're just adding onto the milk. So don't give them also a lot of food, too much, because if you overfeed them, number one, they get constipated. Then number two, they start to refuse milk.
So how do you know the portions? How do you know the right portions in this case?
So at 6 months, the baby should take 2 to 3 tablespoons. So it's a big spoon, just 2 of them. I see people giving the baby like a whole, plate of food. No, the baby should take 2 to 3 tablespoons. Otherwise, you're going to struggle a lot with constipation because you're overfeeding the baby. Yes.
All right, and mixing of the foods, that's another thing. And I think I keep asking this question. There are times as a mother you're told, do not mix milk with porridge, do not mix this meal and this meal. I mean, how do you get to know, while these are the right portions, you ensure that you have proper mixing of these meals? Yes, we're talking about a balanced diet, but there are times you want to have your fruit in that food and everything. Sometimes you're told just have a fruit. Sometimes you really want as a mother to have a combination of like 3, 4, 5 fruits together. And in most cases, I've been told that you should just do a fruit at a time. I mean,
so initially the first months, especially for fruits, you just want to introduce the fruit slowly to your baby. So you can choose one meal can be a fruit, and initially just start with 1 fruit. But even as the baby grows, we usually recommend not more than 2 fruits. So like, for example, you can take a carrot grater and grate an apple and just make that mushy pulp that comes out, and you can mix that with an avocado, for example. Or you can take a banana and a pawpaw or whatever. So, but not more than 2. But initially, the 6 months, just start 1 fruit at a time. For food, you try one type of food at a time. So you don't just do one particular food, but you try types of food together. Like, for example, you can take potato and a vegetable and see if that goes very well. Then now you can add a protein. So it's a gradual process. Don't be in a rush, so that you're also able to see if your baby is reacting to anything. But by the end of the 6 months, the baby should be eating a balanced diet. You also want to try different kinds of porridges, like let's say you take maize porridge. So it's good to add a bit of oil. We do recommend that you don't mix with milk, but you can mix with a type of oil. For example, you can mix with butter, you can mix with some sunflower oil, you can mix with some vegetable oil, because the oil does help the body absorb some of the vitamins I've talked about, like vitamin A and the other vitamins that are helped by the body to be absorbed. The oil helps the body to absorb it. You can add a bit of that, and that is quite useful.
Now you spoke about babies reacting, and I think I don't want us to rub through that. It's important that we also just get to understand, how do you get to know when a baby is allergic to a certain food? How do you introduce the food to them, so at least you're able to detect what it is that they will react to, what it is that will be good enough for them?
Yes. So it's you do a progressive kind of adding meals. So that's why I said, like, rarely do babies react to vegetables, for example. And most starches are usually okay, especially the basics, like, for example, maize porridge or most vegetables. So we start with those because we know that they tend to be least allergenic. So, like, for example, you can start with like for example, terere and potato. So those are they're not likely to be allergenic foods. And then now, as if the baby is comfortable with that, by week 2, then week 3, you can add now the proteins, a bit of the proteins. But a lot of babies are quite okay with a wide variety of foods. The foods that we know that most babies react to tend to be eggs, dairy milk. So that's why we do not recommend that you use cow milk until around age 1, if possible. Continue with breast milk. And then the nut family, whether it's peanuts, groundnuts, tree nuts, things like cashews. So those are the highly allergenic foods. So we can first of all try and stick away from those and stick with the foods that we know are not likely to be babies do not react to often. When the baby reacts, most of them is rashes. They might have rashes around their face. They might have some diarrhea. Some babies will vomit immediately they take the food. For very bad allergies, the baby will swell. They might have swelling around the eyes and around the mouth. And any swelling kind of allergy tends to be more severe. So that one, you should actually seek medical attention if you're seeing the baby swelling immediately after eating a meal. But for most babies, it's the milder reactions. And we actually call it more food intolerance rather than reaction. And the guidelines right now from research is that if a baby reacts to something, unless it's that swelling that causes the swelling, it's a reaction that causes the swelling. If it's just an intolerance, don't remove that food completely from the diet. The baby is able to be tolerant for it. So you stop for maybe a week or 2, then introduce it again. And as you do that, the baby will be intolerant, and by the time they are 1 year, they are comfortably eating that. Sorry. Sorry, could you repeat that? I am not hearing you. I've lost your voice. I'm sorry.
hear me now, Esther?
Yes, I am.
All right, apologies for that. So this was my question. Before we come to the equipment on how you handle the utensils and all that, what about the special cases where you find that a baby is born and maybe the mother is not able to produce enough milk, or maybe a mama has passed on, or maybe the baby is introduced to supplements based on in the fact that they do not have enough weight? What do you do in such scenarios in terms of weaning and all that?
Okay, so the ideal still, even if the mother is not there or for any reason the mother is not able to breastfeed, the ideal is to give the baby a modified infant formula. That's the ideal, because usually the baby system is not yet able to digest solids. So baby should be on milk, whether or not they're not on breast milk, they should be on a type of milk that is modified for an infant until 6 months. And then they start the solids once they reach the 180 days, which is what we usually say is the ultimate before feeding babies. Then you now start on solids, because the enzymes that actually digest solids are ready at around that time. So when you give the baby food much earlier, you put them at risk of allergies, developing allergies later in life. You put them at risk of having long-term digestive issues, things with constipation, and people who suffer a lot with hyperacidity and a lot of all these issues that come up with the tummy. We also put them at risk of anemia, because the stores that they had stored for themselves for iron get depleted much faster when the baby's eating much earlier. And then, of course, the risk of diseases like diarrhea and vomiting, because they get you expose them much earlier to things that can make them sick. So that's why we usually say wait until 6 months, because the baby is now ready. Otherwise, before then, when you give the baby food, yes, the baby might keep quiet because they look full, but all the food does is just stay in the gut a bit and pass out the other side. So you'll hear most mothers saying, when I looked at the poop, I could tell that this baby ate pumpkin, for example. So it was not digested, just passed through the gut, and then you see the food on the other side. If you give a 4-week-old baby porridge, you will tell from the poop that the baby took porridge. So there's not digestion going on. It's just irritating the gut as they go along. Yes.
All right. Well, that's a good one right there. I don't know. Well, on a lighter note, there are numerous times in terms of preparation, I've seen mothers having to chew the foods before they give it to the baby. How effective is this, and or maybe is it dangerous? Because then you also know that there's some bacterial infections that would come from mommy's mouth to the baby.
Yes. The thing about that is the mouth. So, like, for example, when you eat a starch, when you eat, let's say, ugali, because ugali is a starch, the digestion starts in the mouth. So when you chew for your baby, it means that you're giving your baby food that's already digested. So there's a lot of nutrients that the baby will lack when you do that. And of course, the risk of passing infections. So that's why we say everyone has a fork. You don't even need a blender. You have a fork. And that's why when you eat up to 6 months, you can take a fork and mash the food for the baby, and then that will be great. The baby will still be able to eat that food. Yes.
All right. Handling of equipments and cleaning baby utensils. Numerous times you're told, baby's utensils should be treated differently, should be washed differently from the utensils of the rest of the people in the house. Just how genuine is this? And, what are the best equipments, first of all, to introduce baby to food with? For instance, you will tell a mommy, you know what, you're not supposed to use a weaning bottle. Who would ever imagine that? Who would even believe that? Right? I mean, from the teat, you go directly to the weaning bottle. That's the assumption.
Yeah. Yes. But we make it simple. Babies are simple, so we don't want to even complicate things, because I think it just makes it very, very difficult for moms. You just need a nice, colorful plate, and a nice small spoon that the baby is able to eat. And you just need to clean it well with soap. You don't need to do a lot of stuff that I see moms doing and making it very complicated. The baby doesn't need their own special sufuria or their own special. No, just use your sufuria, wash it well with soap, and it's good. As long as it's nice and clean and you're keeping it clean, then that's okay. We do recommend that even at 6 months, you can start transitioning your baby from the bottle. We use the bottles way too much. If possible.
Yeah.
Too much use of the bottle messes up the baby's dental formula.
Yeah.
So you can start giving water with a spoon and a cup, and then as the baby becomes more comfortable, you can buy those small cups that have a lid, and the baby can even learn how to give themselves water. So not complicated. Just use what you have, make it colorful, make it clean it well with soap and water, and you're good to go.
All right. Okay, and speaking of which, you talked about, what it is, some of these foods that they're supposed to eat. There are babies who are introduced to supplements, well, for whatever reasons. Any idea or any speciality when it comes to handling, these babies and how we get to feed them with the supplements?
So for supplements, please do not use supplements unless you have been directed by a doctor.
Yeah.
Remember, babies' immature system, you can actually overdose. Supplements, they're medications too, and there are some minerals in the body. When they are in excess, they can cause damage to the baby's liver, to the baby's kidneys. So please do not supplement yourself. Don't, moms, I see moms discussing and going to buy. Please don't.
Yeah.
Some of these levels can become toxic to the body and can cause damage to the baby.
Mm-hmm.
So make sure that any supplement that you use, it's because the doctor has seen that there's a need to supplement that baby because the baby is maybe having a deficiency, and that's why you're giving it.
Mm-hmm.
If you give to a healthy baby whose system is okay, it means that you might cause toxin. This can build up in the body and cause damage to the baby system. For any supplement that we do give, the one that's generally given at 6 months is vitamin A, and you'll be given at your clinic when you take your baby for your 6-month clinic. You'll be given a vitamin A. It's part of the schedule that's given by the government, and that's basically the only one that you need. Continue breastfeeding your baby. Your milk has most of the necessary minerals that the baby has, and I've talked about iron, which the baby now will get from the foods you give. Otherwise, if your baby is eating a balanced diet, a wide variety, not I call it the Kenyan diet, malenge and spinach only. That's what the baby eats from Monday to Monday. No, that's the same way you eat a varied diet. Vary the baby's diet. In fact, rule of thumb, the same food you're eating, cook it well, avoid putting a lot of salt, put very minimal salt. Mash the same food that you're eating, and your baby will be much happier, and your baby will be eating a wide variety of foods. Yes.
All right. You speak of that, and first of all, I'd want to know, at what point then do you say enough with breastfeeding, or maybe it differs based on, the child? And also, at what point then you say we are eating food, and you're eating from the same pot like mommy, but, the level of salts and sugar also, in a way would probably be looked at as too much for the baby. So in this amount, is it right to give the baby foods with salt or foods with, with salt? Yes, you said yes, but sugar?
So sugar, you don't really need to introduce your baby to sugar. You can use natural sugar, like for example, you can use a fruit to sweeten porridge. You can mash a banana, a ripe banana, and mash a little and add to the porridge, and it's going to sweeten them. For foods also, the babies, they do need salt because they need iodine, but very, very small amounts. So one of the things that I tell moms, you can cook your food and then put very minimal salt, just a small pinch, and then remove the baby's food, and then you can add the other things you want to add into your food, because sometimes you want to add spices and all that. But you can remove baby's food, then mash that, put it on the side, but basically it's the same food. And okay, yeah. Yes.
All right. Okay, yes, that aspect of breastfeeding, at what point then do you say enough is enough? After 1 year, after 2 years, or what?
So WHO recommends that you breastfeed your baby until age 2. There's still great benefit from your milk, especially in the second year of life. Your milk is so full of omega-3 oils that are great for brain development. Your milk tends to have great immunological properties. Now the baby is moving around, they start getting a lot of colds and flus. And especially in these COVID times, breastfeeding has been shown to provide a protective layer for your baby. So please do continue breastfeeding your baby until age 2. A bit longer if you like, but at least age 2 is what we do recommend. Yes.
All right. There are times when you find that your baby loves something so much, yeah? Like, for instance, I'll share my experience, which I don't know whether I'm allowed to, but my baby used to love tea and bread so much that you find every other time you'd give them any meal and there's tea and bread there, they'll go for tea and bread. Then you find that you barely have, a chance to feed them with these other foods. How do you get to balance that? And there are times you're told, what it is that he loves, keep giving him that.
Yes. So it's, especially toddlers tend to do that. Toddlers tend to have food preferences, and you will find that they will choose one thing and that's what they like. So work with that, because you can't win a war with a toddler. Work with that. So for example, if they like bread, they like tea. So we don't recommend that babies take tea because tea interferes with absorption of iron. But you can work it out and take milk, for example, and add a bit of cocoa and tell them that's tea. Okay. And then that bread, cook it with some egg, for example, or make work it out. Like I had a baby who loved ugali, and as long as the food had ugali, so the mother would add carrots, stuff into the ugali, cook it together, and add a bit of chicken into the ugali, and the baby eats the ugali thinking that that's what they're eating. So work with the baby, so that they feel like they're still eating what they like, but you've tried to sneak in as much nutrition in there as possible. For older toddlers, like for example, age 2, age 3, because they will refuse to eat food, but you can tell them, come, we prepare food, and they'll come and prepare it with you, and then you find that because they prepared it, they're going to eat it. Or like for a baby who doesn't eat meat, will not agree to eat meat. So when they see the meal, so when you're cooking the meal, tell them, come and test if it has some salt. You give them 3 pieces, that's enough meat for them. So you can work out, don't fight because you won't win the war, but try and sneak in food any way that you can. Make it more of a snack. Like for example, babies actually don't like that, that mashed food that everyone tends to give them, especially toddlers. Yeah. They like things that they can pick and feed themselves. So you'll find that if you just put plain rice there, they're going to eat it. But if you mix it with many other things, they're not going to eat it. So this moment, give them plain rice. Then another time, cut up a tomato and some, courgettes or a cucumber. And because it's a snack, they're going to eat it. So you can still give your baby a healthy diet, just not in the way that you expect the baby will eat.
Yes, there's a person who is asking this. Tracy Kamau says, what of processed foods, sausages, bacon and all that? And you find that my baby loves them so much. So what do I do? Because the question is it healthy for them?
Yeah, so it's the quantity that matters. So if they're eating it every day, that's a problem because it's so full of these other things that they have. But you can give them once in a while. And remember, babies will eat what you provide. So if you don't even buy so it's not there. So what do we do? You can work it out so that you maybe buy it once a week and tell the baby it's finished, and cook it and finish it, and then offer other foods. At the end of the day, your baby is a human being. Hunger speaks. So when they don't have something else to eat, they'll eat what is available. So that's what I'm saying. Sometimes as parents, we give in to unhealthy, and it means that you're also teaching your baby unhealthy habits right from the start. So provide foods that are healthy in a way that the baby finds attractive. Babies are attracted to color. Like if your baby doesn't like, let's say, sweet potato, cut it up in the shape of a star. And tell them this is a star. They're going to eat it because they are so excited by that star. So try and work it out so that you appeal to the toddler sense. Most toddlers prefer to feed themselves, and then you'll find that they are going to eat. Spread out. Keep leaving small pieces of fruit, for example, around the house. You'll find that as the baby walks around and they're doing their little thing, if they find a piece of banana there, they're going to pick it and eat it, even if it's 2 pieces. And at the end of the day, they'll have eaten enough. Yes.
All right. So child-led weaning and mother-led weaning. Child-led in most cases considered as the natural approach to weaning. While when it comes to mother-led, sometimes we even get to points where we force our babies to eat. The Jaluo style. I don't know whether you've heard of that, where
I know.
So how do you get to balance this? Yeah.
So we do not, especially the forceful feeding. Number one, you put your baby at risk of choking. because as they are eating, most likely they are crying, and so their airway is open. So it's very easy for food to escape into the airway and cause choking or aspiration pneumonia, where the small pieces of food that end up in the lungs. But also it means that you're making your baby have a bad relationship with food. So as I said, it's a war you can't win. If a baby does not want to eat, and that's why we say it's complementary feeding.
Yeah.
If the baby doesn't want to eat, just give milk. Milk is the main food, and then wait until the baby is hungry. And sometimes also it's because you're overfeeding the baby. So the baby wakes up at 8, they're given porridge. At 10, they're given fruit. At 12, they're given, something else. It's way too much food. So give porridge in the morning, give milk in between, wait until the baby is showing signs of hunger, then you give a little food, 2 to 3 tablespoons, then wait until the baby, so follow the baby's cues. We call it responsive feeding the baby when they want to be fed, following their cues. When they eat 3-4 spoons and then they say, I'm done, they'll turn away, they'll look uninterested in the food, they'll start eating their hands instead of the food, they'll stop opening their mouth. Follow those cues. If the baby is saying no, respect that. When the baby has a good responsive relationship with food, you won't have a struggle eating. They'll eat, and if they don't want to eat, that's okay. Sometimes they're teething, so the gums hurt, eat food. So you can give porridge or you can prepare soups. I don't know why when we are unwell as adults and we just want to eat, take soup, but for a baby you won't force feed the baby, and the baby is unwell.
Yeah.
So prepare a chicken soup and add a bit of nice tomatoes and stuff. Prepare the soup, make it nice so that the baby is able to eat and they're able to take, because they're not. It's not being very uncomfortable. So
and now you bring me to this point, Esther, where you asked that, and I was like, it results to a lot of wastage when you've just given them 1 spoon and they do not want to see the food anymore. And again, what you normally told that, well, once you have tried that 1 serving, if they've not finished it, throw it away. Get fresh food or special food again when you want to win them the next round. I mean, how do you ensure that we avoid wastage of food in this scenario? Because I mean, that will be too much for mommy to handle.
Yes, and so that's the first thing, is give them from your own plate. Feed the same food you're eating, so you won't feel like it's wasted, because anyway you're gonna eat the food if they don't finish. But if you're cooking for your baby separately, don't cook a lot. Cook small amounts, and you can divide it. Let's say you can divide it and say that if you have a fridge, you can say that you will cook for 2 days. So for today and tomorrow, put it towards the back of the fridge, and you can rewarm it and warm it well. Put it back into the fire, the way we say chemsha. Put it back into the pot and warm it well. Or you can cook in the morning, and that's what the baby will eat at lunchtime and at dinner. So don't cook a lot of food so that you're not feeling like you're wasted. The reason you throw away food that has gotten into contact with the spoon, it's because the spoon is going to the mouth, and saliva carries bacteria. So if you put that spoon back into the plate and keep that food, the bacteria will start growing, and your baby might get a food infection.
Speaking of warming, is it right to microwave?
So I microwave sometimes doesn't warm the food evenly.
Okay.
And so if there's a bacteria that is there, it might not die the way, especially if the food has proteins like meats and all that.
Right.
And so that's why we recommend put it back into the pot, and so that it warms properly.
Okay.
We've also had cases of babies getting really burnt because a baby's food tends to be mashed, so there are some hot spots and the baby's mouth can really burn.
Right.
So put it in a pot so that it's able to, in a sprayer so that it's able to warm evenly, and that's better for baby. Yes.
Okay, then in this case, you talked about, serve them or feed them from your own plate. And I will tell you my own experiences. It normally is very hard for me to, first of all, feed my baby from my plate and then come again and eat that food. Like I get distracted, which is unfair. Remember, I'm also a mother who's breastfeeding at this point. Well, I'm just assuming that we are on that fast laps of winning. I am breastfeeding. I equally need to get enough nutrients, good food for that matter. So how do we get to balance this and ensure that we make weaning, comfortable for baby and comfortable for me? We have proper nutrients for the baby and equally proper nutrients for the mommy.
So you can take the food apart, baby's food on the side, and put on their own plate.
Okay.
And then now you can maybe, babies eat better when they see other people eating. That's why we keep saying, don't feed the baby separately, and then they eat later. So the baby starts thinking, this food that you're giving me that I don't see you eating, is it nice? But so that's why we encourage that communal. Babies are social beings, that communal eating. So eating with the rest of the family is important. But you can maybe have your plate on the side where you have your own food, and then you put the baby in food in their own plate, and then mash that, and the baby is able to eat.
How do you concentrate when you're feeding them and feeding yourself at the same time? Sometimes it really can be hectic.
Right?
Yeah.
It's a skill I tell every mama that they need to get. But you can maybe feed your baby fast, and then pretending, and then once you're done, please give yourself. Remember that you also need to eat. Finish your food, warm it if it's already cold, and eat it if you can. But it's that balancing act as a mom that you get. And sometimes you even have a baby that's breastfeeding and you're feeding the toddler. You have to. So you just have to learn how to balance and take care of yourself. And if you find that you're not very good at that multitasking, that's why we say it takes a village. There are other people in the home. There's the baby's dad who can feed the baby as you eat. There's other people in the home. There's grandma, there's nanny. It takes a village. We don't do it alone. So use the village to help you take care of your baby. Yes.
All right. So how long approximately time-wise should one take, in weaning the baby? Well, much as we say that it's about what baby wants, or if they say no, there are times that, some of them can eat and eat and eat and eat.
Yes. And that's why we say 2 to 3 tablespoons initially, up to around 8 months. From 8 months, you increase it to around 6 to 8 tablespoons. And from around 1 year, they'll be eating like a cupful. That cup we use in our country. They call it so that kind of cup, they eat that cup full. And that's the whole meal, like a balanced diet with the full starches, proteins, vegetables. So that's how basically how we look at the portions that the baby needs.
Some mummies take forever allowing their kids to go move around, then come for a spoon, move around, then come for a spoon. Is that really right?
Yes. No. It's good to teach your baby to eat when they are seated. So right from the beginning, like when my baby was small, I used to have a lasso, and I'd put it wherever we were, maybe even sit on the carpet, and I'd put the lasso down and we sit. So whenever I even brought the lasso, you'd see the baby, crawling, coming and sitting.
They know very well.
Yes, this is where we eat.
Yeah.
So babies learn by association. So don't, because that walking around, they can fall, they can choke. So you really want to protect your baby, and you also want to teach them that when we are eating, we sit down, sit and eat. If you are able to afford, you can get a feeding chair. That's a chair that you're able to feed, but that's not necessary. Even just a lasso, babies make association. So if every time you're feeding the baby, you take the lasso and put them there, they start associating that this lasso, because you hold them in an upright position, or put them to sit in a place that is designated for eating. And if every single time you're feeding the baby you do that, you'll find that the baby just gets accustomed to that, and that becomes easier for you as well. Yes.
Before we get to how do you now train them to start feeding themselves, you mentioned something to do with choking. And I know very many moms out here have lost their babies to choking and all that. So how do you, what is the first first aid move that you make when you realize that your baby is choking? Because it happens a lot.
So you do need to, first of all, look at, that's what I talked about, the texture of the food needs to be ready for the baby. So when you mash with a fork, especially for when you start off, that means the baby is actually able to handle that. Teach your baby how to chew. I keep telling moms that is the first protective thing about choking is teaching your baby how to chew. So when they pick up something, babies who are just used to swallowing, blended food or pass through a kichungi, what they'll do is they'll just think that everything that goes into the mouth, I try and swallow. But a baby who knows how to chew, they'll put it in the mouth, and they'll figure, no, I can't swallow this, and they'll spit it out. So first of all, teach the baby how to chew by offering textured food right from the beginning. The second thing is that never let your baby eat alone. You should never leave food lying around, especially for the small ones. Foods that can, any food, always supervise that. Don't leave food lying around. And do not feed your baby when they are crying. As I said, they can easily choke. And then make sure that any foods that can choke a baby, things like nuts, grapes, big pieces of carrots. So foods that the baby can easily eat and they can block their airway, you do not offer the food. Chunky food like that, popcorn, those are things you do not offer your baby. Make sure that everything that the baby is able to eat is small enough and soft enough for the baby to be able to swallow. If your baby is choking, I tell every parent, when you go for your clinic, please ask your healthcare provider. I know they're in a hurry, but most hospitals, even in public hospitals, they have these talks where they offer these trainings to you to do first aid. So ask in your local health center, when is a first aid talk coming around? And usually they're there. And it's just that we never know about them or we don't ask about them. You can find out. Nowadays, the media is open. You can go on social media and Google and find, what do I do if my baby is choking, and watch a video of what to do. So equip yourself with information. But because it's a bit hard to explain here, but the information is out there. So get training so that you're able to know what to do if your baby is choking, or if any other baby is choking, you're able to know what to do.
Importance of getting the baby to burp is because there are times I've seen babies, right after eating. Some of them actually sleep while they're eating, and parents will proceed and put them in bed and forget about that. So when do you get them to have water or to drink water, and when, in the event that they sleep, how do you ensure that they do not just wake up somewhere in their sleep and probably are choked and maybe you were not there?
Yes. So for babies should take after 6 months. Babies before 6 months don't really need water, but once they start eating solids, then you should give water, not too much, maybe around 100 ml the whole day, and you give small amounts through the day, not a lot of water all at once. It's small amounts throughout the day. If your baby does sleep when they're eating, ideally hold them up for around 10 minets. Don't put them down immediately. When they make sure that there's nothing in the mouth. Let's say they were eating. Try and put, check that there's no, they've swallowed whatever was in the mouth and there's no food that's left. Another thing you can do is you can elevate where they're sleeping so that their upper body is kind of elevated so that they're not lying completely flat. That just helps in case food comes up. But just holding them, upright for around 10 minutes before you put them down. That will make sure that everything that's possibly not quite gone down has gone down. Yes.
Okay, I would have loved for us to talk about how you get to introduce them or train them on feeding themselves. In 30 seconds, what is the basic that you can give in terms of, introducing them to knowing how they can hold their cups and, just feed themselves on small things?
Yes. So from around 9 months, most babies will start reaching out or wanting to feed themselves. So you give pieces of food that are easy for the baby to hold. Don't give small amounts. Babies don't eat like this. They eat like they hold something like this and eat. So make sure that it's long enough for the baby to be able to do that. Give them small pieces of food and they'll start eating for themselves. You can give pieces of fruit, soft vegetables that you've cooked that are long enough for the baby to hold. And by the time they're 9 months, they'll be able, most babies by 1 year can feed themselves with their hands, and by 2 years can use a spoon or a fork.
Wow, thank you so much, Esther, for the great insight. Esther is a lactation expert, and today we're all about learning on how best we can introduce baby to food. And next week is breastfeeding week, right? Week or month?
Yes, it's World Breastfeeding Week or month. We celebrate breastfeeding, and yes, we will be talking a lot about breastfeeding, and the theme this year is breastfeeding, supporting breastfeeding for a healthier planet. So we want a healthier planet, and breastfeeding is one of the key, things that we can use to create a healthier planet.
All right. So mommies out there, you know that we got a show for you. That's a promise sometimes on Thursday next week. And I can almost guarantee you that Esther has done so well, and we'll definitely invite her back to take us through the process of breastfeeding. Thank you so much for keeping it TV47. It is now time that we wind up on a morning cafe, as I look forward to see you again tomorrow, same time, same place. It was great having you. My name is Linda Alela. Thank you so much for the feedback, and we see you again tomorrow. Do enjoy the rest of your viewing. Thank you so much once again, Esther.
Moja, gol mbili,